We drive trucks, we plow fields, we'll work from sun up until it goes back down again. We raise hell on Friday nights. It becomes Sunday morning, you can find us at the Church of Christ. It may sound like a simple life, but the living sure is fine. Yeah, where I come from, we drank moonshine.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Appalachian Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Riddle. With me is my red-coated co-host, Simon Winch. We are here at LibertyCon for another show. This is a little bit different from our Streamline show. We have a couple of different guests come in. We're going to try and drag this one out for a good 45 minutes, maybe to an hour, because we got one hell of a guest sitting. Actually, a couple of good guests here sitting with us today.
Oh, yes. No names, no pack drill.
Some phenomenal gentlemen we've met down here this weekend, and as Spike and Brian so eloquently put it before we showed here, we're going to meet all kinds of awesome people. And naturally, bringing Simon the Brit here today, he has found his kissing cousins from Australia every time we turn around.
Listen, these are my Antipodean cousins, mate.
You kicked them halfway across the world into a penal colony.
Oh,
was that before or after we kicked y'all's asses back to the island? When did Australia?
I think it was about the same time, right?
It was pretty close to the same time. I don't remember the exact sequence of events. All I can say though is thank you, because you got us off that godforsaken island.
Into an island.
Much bigger and better island.
Much bigger.
Onto an island that everything that crawls, walks, swims wants to fucking kill you.
Even Steve Irwin couldn't make it.
True.
Even Steve Irwin.
Hey, too soon. Too soon.
Okay, I just realized who I was sitting here at the table with. I just realized who I was sitting. Hey.
Now, listen, the reason why Aussies are as tough as we are is because everything's trying to kill us. It is survival of the fittest down there. And quite frankly, most of us aren't fit to survive. And what I've suggested is a way of solving global overpopulation. I've talked to Klaus Schwab himself in person. I went to the World Economic Forum. I said, listen, we can solve this problem. We just put all the Australian animals onto all the other continents and wait a couple of months. The whole problem sorts itself out.
Just as the spiders,
he's got a pretty damn good point.
I think he's been around the block a couple of times. He figured this thing out.
Them brown snakes.
Mm-hmm.
It would make the world a much better place, I guarantee.
So I bought a set of knives that it was from China, Chinese knives with Chinese Chinglish on the back with the instructions. And under the safety warnings, it said, keep out of children.
Keep out of children?
Yeah, keep out of children. And I said, I'm a libertarian. You can't tell me what to do.
Internally or externally?
It just blanket rule, keep out of...
It didn't say keep out of their hands, it said keep out of children. So how about not stabbing your children?
Yeah, so my motto, though, is good people break bad laws. So as soon as you give me a warning like that, I'm going to turn around and do it.
Simon, are y'all related?
I believe we might be.
Oh, my good.
Oh, good Lord, what have we just done?
It's a good thing we're not having this in California, otherwise Prop 65 will come after him.
All right, real quick, since this is his own personal episode, major shout out and big thanks to Brian down at Rocky Mountain Burger Company in the early end back home for making this trip possible, and everybody that helped us out make this trip possible. We all like your support. We got some big things coming here in the near future. And if you want to become a subscriber, maybe we'll put one of these shows up here we have on Patreon for a couple of weeks. Well, actually, they're all going to be on Patreon for a few weeks before.
This one might be a bit fruity, so if this one could be a Patreon show, because I've got a feeling it's going to go a little bit.
No, the whole world needs to hear this show. It'll be Patreon just so we can suck a couple of dollars out of people, but the world needs to, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to talk a little bit deeper and a little bit slower into the microphone?
We don't need to get into a competition.
Wow.
But if you want to become a subscriber, go to patreon.com/getontap for just $3. It's a dime a day. One simple dime. You find it on the ground walking into work. You can support us, support trips like this. And it helps us come up here and meet fine gentlemen like this. We can encourage them to come back to Appalachia and hang out and go tell the world what an awesome place full of automatic weapons, cannon fire, and tannerite it is.
Truth.
So,
and moonshine. Let's not forget the moonshine.
Yeah, and the moonshine, of course, obviously.
Pretty sure I'm drinking some of it right now.
Well, yeah.
Pretty close.
Yeah, and speaking of moonshine, one of our good friends, Henry Law, if you're out there and you know the TV show Moonshiners, check it out. Watch our buddy Henry Law. He's on there every week teaching them how to do it, doing it right. And I really wish Henry could have come up here because he had aha libertarian moment with Spike on that show back in the summertime because he ran bootleg for so long and saw how the law just shit on them for no reason. Like they turned them into criminals and made them a target for other criminals because they couldn't go to the police and say, well, hey, they tried to steal my moonshine. I mean, it's just, So if you're listening to this for the first time, go check out some of that. We got some great stuff back home. But for this show, we're going to jump right into it because I love these guys. We've been talking to them the last couple of days here. I'm trying to, if you'd let me get to it, Abe.
Abe.
Should you be back in the back saying more?
That's Mr. President to you.
So we got our good friend Chip Slate from Being Libertarian, and Chip is actually a part of the show now too, but I like throwing Being Libertarian in there because he's got a shit ton of followers, and I hope some of them come over and start following us as well and make this collaboration work. So Chip's here with us again, and we got Topher Field and Adrian.
Adrian.
Just Adrian. Oh, okay, just Adrian. Both
Australia.
Both of these guys are Aussies, and
sorry, I'll tell you his name. His name is Adrian. That's his name. Okay, it's
that
redacted.
Wasn't what you said offline.
It's redacted for good legal reasons.
I don't know if y'all were around when I said this earlier, but just a few minutes ago, I said I'm starting to think he might be our assigned Fed for the week because he's hanging out with us a lot. He doesn't want us to use his last name, and he's pretty good looking and in shape. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't be hanging around guys. He could be out on the
Adrian,
right
Adrian, how much did you pay him? Good looking and in shape. Far out. I hope the check's in the mail.
Well, you should have seen me during lockdown because, trust me, it didn't look that good back then.
So I know y'all jump on it first. We'll jump right into it. You're from Australia, and you were here at a Liberty conference, and there's a lot of people out there that might not pay attention enough and might not understand what's going on, but if you were kind of like us who was heavily invested during the COVID era, here in our little Appalachian area, we were refused it. We're not wearing freaking masks. You're not telling us to walk on arrows in a grocery store aisle. You know, you're not, all these things that not everybody did it, but us, our specific core people. Look, Australia was a hellscape during that time. That's kind of,
I think New Zealand was actually even worse.
No, it depends on which part of Australia you're talking about. So the state of Victoria, under our Herr Daniel Andrews, the dear leader, was the worst in the world until China started welding doors shut in 2022.
Right.
It took them literally welding people into their apartments to take over from Daniel Andrews' psychopathic tyranny.
Which they did.
Which they did do. They did take over. However, if you take Australia as an average across the entire country, it was probably the state of Victoria was the worst, New Zealand was probably next, and then Australia as a whole was next, and then Canada.
Well, all the countries of the crown right there.
All the places that are supposed to have the common law and human rights and this grounding in this sense of freedom and separation of the state from our human rights. We all went down the toilet.
Badly.
I
mean, my brother lives in New Zealand, and I couldn't believe the shit that was going on there. That's just like,
twin brother, by the way, identical. So
no way.
Poor guy. Poor guy.
It's disturbing. It's disturbing.
Exactly.
It's disturbing. You might run across him, and you're going to be just to let you know, in that neck of the woods.
But one of the other things with New Zealand is it's actually it's an isolated island, but it's two separate islands themselves. So and everyone is distant because they're all farmers. So you've got this really weird issue of complete lockdowns everywhere, when the ability for COVID to travel is very, very difficult in the first place.
I couldn't understand it. I mean, the stuff I was hearing, he's still living in Auckland, but he was on a marina up there somewhere, and he would look over some very strangely named mountain range that sounded like fuck your dick off or something. I can't remember what it was. But it sounded typically Maori.
New Zealand, yeah.
And he was there in his vehicle, and he said, he goes, I'm looking out the car, and I can see some orcas, killer whales, running through the gap between the islands. I said, get out your car and fucking show me on the camera. He goes, oh no, I can't do that. I said, what do you mean you can't do that? He goes, we're not allowed out of our cars if we're driving from A to B. I said, there's no one anywhere, right? He goes, yeah. So get out your fucking car.
Yeah, so I made a documentary about the madness in Melbourne, and what you've just said there is absolutely true, but it sounds unbelievable. And I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that sound unbelievable, but I promise you they are absolutely true. We have the videos, we have the receipts, we have the proof. Can you believe, imagine if you will, an alternative universe Well, there is that. 1996. We can get to that later. Where the government places the entire populace under house arrest and says you can only leave your house for 1 hour a day. Where that house arrest is enforced by the police with glee. They didn't just do it out of a sense of duty.
Awful.
They enjoyed it.
That's sick.
There were people, so you were allowed out of your house for up to 1 hour, but you still had to have an excuse. There were 4 main excuses. You were exercising, you were going to the shops, you were going to get medical help, or you were providing care to someone who needed it. Or, sorry, a fifth one, you were an essential worker. There were people there, the politicians, of course, felt that they were essential, gave themselves permission to do whatever the hell they wanted.
That's insane.
So even if you were out of your house within that 1 hour, they would demand to know the reason why you were out of the house. And you had to provide it to them.
Show us your papers.
Yes, show us your papers.
sounds
Papers,
That's
please.
it.
Now,
That's it.
Insured against your better.
yeah. Well, let me continue, because you had to be within 5 kilometers of your house. And what
Yeah,
they would
2.2
do,
miles.
which, 3 miles
Yeah,
thereabouts?
about 3 miles.
So and they would have the sheriff's department there with their number plate scanners. And if they scanned you and looked at your home address and said, you're too far away.
Deregulate those fucking scanners now.
all right,
Oh my
Now,
God.
it gets worse. They shut down schools. Now, I'm not talking for 2 weeks. We were shut down on and off, but mostly shut down for 18 months. These kids lost an entire year or more of their schooling. People lost their lives.
Yeah.
A lot of people lost their livelihoods.
set back.
People missed out on these formative sort of moments, the formals and these sorts of things that, okay, it's only a formal. But for those individuals, that's a really formative moment. People were forced, and I struggle even to say this because it's so unfucking believable.
Mhm.
People were forced to sit in the car park of a hospital on a Zoom call with a dying relative that was inside that hospital because
True.
they were not allowed in.
True.
And this is not for a couple of weeks. This is for a year and a half this happened. Weddings were cancelled. It got to the point that playgrounds were shut down because they were trying to stop anybody from doing anything around other people. Now, listen, I'm a father of, at the time, 2 children. My second child was born in the middle of all the madness. I've had a third one since. I never used to take my kids. Sorry, no, let me say it a different way. I did not used to take my kids to the playground every day.
Mm-hmm.
But the minute they said I couldn't,
Hell yeah.
we were going to 3 or 4 playgrounds a day.
Fuck them.
I did not care. And listen, my kids are like, Dad, we're exhausted. We've been to 5 playgrounds. Shut up, kid. Get in the car. We're going to another one.
Enjoy it.
And look how thin I am. The wind's blowing me over. Yes, Dad.
They said I can't do it.
Okay, Dad.
Do you think that was the government's dry run on how fast can we get what we want?
There is no question that it served that purpose. I'm not in their heads.
Was
I
it
can't
that
tell you
malicious?
that was
Because
their
I think
intention.
it was that malicious.
They don't have guns. They don't have
Adrian?
gun rights.
What do you reckon? Is Daniel Andrews just such a psychopathic personality that he actually believed he was doing good, or do you believe that he actually understood he was doing evil? What's your thought on that?
I'd almost say it's a little part A, a little part B. It was a case, if there's one thing that Daniel Andrews was good at, it was that he loved to amass power. So we're talking about someone whose entire professional career went from from university student to an electorate officer, which is like a very low level role in a member of parliament's office, to then becoming a backbench, an MP, a backbencher, a shadow minister, and then premier. His entire life is just nothing but politics. His entire career has been
Barack Obama,
nothing but
Bernie
politics.
Sanders, that's
It
bullshit.
is.
Yeah.
And he's in a party that that knows how to campaign and knows how to maintain and maintain power. If you look at Australia at the moment, they control every single state and territory in Australia, excluding Tasmania, and as well as federally as well. So we're talking about effectively what is the democratic equivalent in Australia, controlling every single state as well as the federal government.
Bar one. Yeah.
Okay, here's a question. Do you regret now having your guns taken away?
So this happened when both Adrian and I were very young. All right. So that happened when I was 14 years of age. So I
Right.
didn't really have a lot of say in whether or not that was
No,
going down
I
or
understand
not.
that.
Here's the funny thing. Whenever I say to the gun owning community in Australia that our guns were confiscated, they get upset with me. So I run the Aussie Wire in Australia. We're an alternative news site in Australia, and we cover guns, which is not a popular topic
I'm
in
sure.
Australia. They don't want you to talk about it.
Yep.
I'm massively pro-gun. right?
Yeah.
I've loved my time in the US, surrounded by people who were concealed carrying, open carrying, don't
Right.
care. If I lived in the US, I would own guns. Of course I would. I would go out shooting regularly. My wife would own a gun. She's already said it. Like, she'd love to have a handgun in her handbag after the way we've been treated a couple of times in Australia. And I'd be teaching my son. He's 6. He'd have an air rifle, and I'd be teaching him gun safety,
Perfect.
marksmanship, how to shoot, all of that stuff, right?
We must be related.
Yeah, no, I'm all about it. But one of the unfortunate things is, so people think Australians are these rugged, independent people, right? And we have this stereotype, the Crocodile Dundee,
Right.
the Steve Irwin, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry to tell you that is a myth.
I'm afraid I've worked enough with the offshore Aussies, and I'm afraid it is a myth.
The
Very
tragedy is that that's a myth. I would love for that to be true. See, people think Australians are descended from convicts, and we talked about this right at the very start of the show, right? You send all your people from a small island to a bigger island, right?
sad. I often use it as a point of argument.
Now, people say you were descended from convicts. Well, yes, but we were also descended from the prison guards.
Mm.
And tragically, the prison guard culture is the one that's winning right now in
Wow.
Australia.
That's a hell of an analogy, and you know
God
what?
damn, I
That's
hadn't thought
that's a very interesting point.
That's well said.
Look, not a lot.
Like the ones that got thrown in jail for having brain.
Nah, they were thrown in jail mostly for stealing bread. They were desperate. They were poor. They were being kept out of opportunities by the rulers of the
But
day.
being poor don't make you being stupid.
Well, no, but stealing a loaf of bread because your kid's hungry doesn't make you stupid. It makes you desperate.
Yes.
Right.
And it also doesn't make you a villain, and it shouldn't make you a fucking convict.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, literally deep.
you know,
sent to
God
the other
bless
side
the
of
crown.
world. Yeah.
And-
But anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why as soon as people finish their serving time as convicts, they were instantly freemen. They were instantly given land to be able to become their own farmers. And that's one of the things that I've always loved at being an Australian is that it's always been a country where there's a second opportunity. And we see that with people who are migrating to Australia. Like, it is a great country.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that the way that our governments run is always in the best interest of individuals.
This is a really good point, right? There are a lot of Australians who say, "What are you complaining about? Australia's a great place." And I'm like, yes, that's why I'm angry.
Right.
Right? We are a great place,
You
but
wanna
we are
keep it that way.
undermining it. We are throwing it away. All of the sacrifice and hard work of our ancestors that made this country fucking amazing, we are throwing away like it's completely worthless. It's the fact that Australia is amazing that makes me angry and makes me do what I do.
Same
That
for
ma-
here.
that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
That
same.
makes a lot of
I can see that being a huge
makes a lot of
motivator as well, because I'd be fucked off to the core watching something go, counterclockwise down the toilet.
I nearly made a joke about the direction. You said down the court. I nearly did. You beat me to the punch.
There we go. But
There's the Simpsons reference, everybody.
don't.
He's got it.
The man's got his finger on the pulse.
Yeah, I mean, and when you talk about the Australia stereotype, that's how it is here. Just in Appalachia, Virginia, you think of Australia, happy-go-lucky, kind of tough and rugged people, but, very resilient. And then during COVID, you see all this stuff going on, and you see people dragged from their homes and people thrown into camps, and these hot-looking women on Instagram saying, "Ooh, I'm here in this, COVID camp." The propaganda was, this can't be.
All right.
Like, Australia's a cool cousin. What is going on?
Let me throw something at you. That is either going to be like, yeah, of course, that's obvious, or it's going to blow your mind. It'll be one extreme or the other. All right, let's play this out. I'm going to watch. If I see your brains just popping, I'll know I'm doing well. If I don't, we'll change the subject and move on. All right.
Yeah, when you see his
will.
eyebrows going
It
up
will.
and down
You're right.
rapidly,
Yeah.
you've got a good response.
Now, so you guys are from Appalachia. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that's like. I'm not American. I don't have a stereotype to apply, except for the fact that he's got a mullet and you're dressed like Abraham Lincoln. And you've got this whole merchant marine thing going on.
Red coat.
What is it?
It's my fucking red coat.
All right, your red coat. All right, fine. You got all this going
Nailed
on.
it.
Okay.
He nailed it.
He
y'all.
nailed the merchant marine too, though. I mean,
No, exactly. He nailed it.
you know that.
Although it's just so the listeners are at home aware, we're also just 2 blocks down from Ford's Theatre as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
700
You know,
paces.
nothing significant's ever happened there, apart from maybe a rendition of Gone with the Wind. Now,
Oh, that's great.
I love
Running on
it.
their first class.
Oh,
all right,
dear.
now back to my point. Have you guys heard of a thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Is this a thing? Is this something that gets taught?
I haven't heard of it.
Okay. So what this is kind of it's a way of looking at people and what their priorities are. It's represented as a triangle, right? At the very top of the triangle is like life is effing perfect. You have everything.
Utopia.
It's utopia. You wake up every morning excited to be alive, exactly like our Abraham Lincoln over here, because, I mean, he would be excited if he was still alive.
Yeah.
Now, that means you've got a sense of fulfillment, a sense of purpose, a sense of community. You're living your best life. All of your needs are met and then some. Down the bottom of that triangle, the base of the triangle, the wide part of the triangle is your most basic human needs: oxygen, water, shelter, food, right? And then in between, as you move up that triangle, as your most basic human survival needs are met, you start to care about, have I got disposable income? Then you start to care about, well, I don't like my job. Guess what? The issue of whether or not you like your job is not a question that is asked by someone who's struggling for survival, right? That's a pretty privilege. By the time you're asking yourself that question, you're already in a pretty good spot, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, in Australia, as in America, most of us are clustered somewhere around the middle of that triangle. Very few people are struggling for the basics of survival. And very few people, if any, are living this self-actualization. That's the term for this, like this most incredible life that you could possibly imagine. We're all in the middle. Then along comes COVID, or more specifically, along comes lockdowns. And a fantastically fascinating thing happens. All the people that are self-employed, run their own business, etc., whose income depends, casual employees, etc., they get shoved towards the bottom of that hierarchy because they've just lost their income. They've just lost... suddenly they're worried about their survival at a level they haven't been potentially before in their lives, right? And they get angry and they start protesting. But what happens to the other half is fascinating because not only are they not pushed towards the bottom, but at least in Daniel Andrews' Victoria, they were given the opportunity to move to the very top. Let me explain. These are people that are laptop workers or on welfare or retirees or essential workers. These people could still pay their bills.
Right.
Now, not only were they not pushed towards the bottom, but now Daniel Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, gets on the TV for, I believe it was 140 consecutive days for a 1 hour plus press conference where he's updating the rules every day, massaging the rules ever so slightly, changing them ever so slightly. And giving us this important government messaging, things that are not at all Orwellian, things that don't sound like they came out of 1984 at all.
And this was also on every TV channel as well, so you couldn't even switch between the channels.
Couldn't turn the fucker off.
Yeah, it was a complete roadblock.
Completely sensible things like staying apart keeps us together, because that doesn't sound like it came out of George Orwell at all, right?
Right.
So
I believe that may have been a direct quote.
Exactly.
So, and all of this language is being used for a very good reason. We know that he spent millions of dollars on market research, on public polling, and on psychological profiling to refine his. We know that for a fact.
So that's a game plan.
Of our money, of our taxpayers'
At that
money.
point, that's a game plan.
This is why I asked Adrian the question earlier.
That's why I've done that.
Yeah, correct.
Exactly.
Do you think he's just that psychopathic, or do you think maybe there was a plan? So these people who were not shoved to the bottom, all they have to do is buy into the messaging. We're saving grandma. We're fighting the virus. Staying home saves lives. And if they just buy into that messaging, guess what? They move up towards the top. Because
rewarded for compliance.
What gives you a greater sense of purpose than saving lives? Saving grandma, defeating the greatest pandemic of our lifetime, blah, 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 all of the BS. Now, these people not only were they not shoved to the bottom, for those 2 years, they lived their best lives. And here's the kicker. That was the best life they've ever lived. And when it ended, they were sad because they know that that's the best life they will ever have.
Right. They've lost that.
Yeah, but now are they fighting to hold on to it?
Some of them are.
Of
They're calling
course.
for lockdowns now.
Yep.
Oh yeah, because it's going to come back.
Yeah.
And just as a quick reference, so the organisation that was doing all this analysis was actually referred to as Insights Victoria, and it wasn't just the government that had access to it as well. It was also the Victorian Police Chief, as well as the Chief Health Medical Officer as well, and the Emergency Management Commissioner too. So you go, what would they be doing with that sort of data across every single Victorian across the entire state?
Yeah. So you know how in Christianity we have the Holy Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Well, I put it to you that in Victoria,
he's a minister, so
in Victoria, I just got the middle finger for mentioning God.
No.
Okay, right. But I put it to you that in Victoria we had the Satanic Trinity. And that was the Premier Daniel Andrews, the Chief Health Officer, and the Chief Police Minister. And they formed the triune Satan, if you will, of COVID.
One has to look at it as demonic.
Unfortunately, yes.
You cannot draw any other analogy than this has been driven.
Now, I don't know, Adrian, do you want to push back on that? Because I don't think you're aligned quite the same way that I am with that.
Well,
I'm just going to throw him under the bus here and just say, hey, Adrian, what do you think?
Look, as someone who saw a lot of what was going on and someone who was actually living directly in the city at the time, when I've shown people in America footage of seeing police on every corner of every intersection being stopped and continuously asked,
crazy.
what are you doing? Why are you here? Where are you going?
Yeah.
Now, I was someone who was considered at the time essential. I had to carry 5 pages of paperwork everywhere I
the
went.
joke's on us. Adrian, essential? Come on.
Ouch.
But I feel that's
But
crazy.
you literally, it was literally a case of show us your papers and are you actually going to work? Are you actually going to the supermarket? And for me, the supermarket was across the road. Of interest though, it was beyond frustrating because those of us who were trying to still make things happen were stuck in this thing where you'd either have other friends upset with you because you were able to actually do something, but it didn't make it any less better for us because you'd be sitting in an office by yourself, isolated. Wow. We'd still have to wear face masks indoors, even if we were sitting in an office by ourselves. You'd have to fight your way to your office.
Crazy.
And the rules still applied. So, if I wasn't home by 9 p.m. each night, I could expect a police officer to say, what are you doing? Why are you out?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this?
Fuck
How
you.
many? I'm interested to figure what if the average citizen swung round and is a bloody minded citizen, and basically swung round to the stormtrooper and told him to go fuck himself. What would happen to him?
They'd find themselves probably thrown into a back of what we'd call a divvy van, a divisional van, and they'd go through the process.
The throwing into the back of a divvy van would follow, and we've got video evidence of this, being picked up and spear tackled into the ground with the head injuries that go along with that. And they would wake out of a coma in a hospital bed with their arms handcuffed to the bed under police guard. That's how it was. Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, you also had there was the other independent journalists in Melbourne.
Rukshan Fernando, Avi Yamini,
Avi
Anthony
Yamini,
Burge. There's a bunch of great ones.
Yeah, so he so
I avoided it from time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Avi, it's depending on who you are. Some people really like him, some people don't. But either way, he was doing independent media, and he was actually at where there was a protest happening, and I think he had 4 or 5 police surround him. And they just literally grabbed him.
Is this his first arrest, his second arrest, or his third arrest?
I think this might have been the second one.
Okay.
and in the air, and on that particular one, all they did was they put him into the back of a police vehicle, drove him around for about 2 hours, dropped him off in the middle of nowhere, and then said, best way to find your way home, which seemed completely... Yeah, just basically dumped him out because the reason was...
They just wanted to waste his time and take him away from being able to document the protest.
Exactly. Now, whether you agree with him or not, you have to say, is that really an appropriate use of taxpayer-funded police resources?
And police power. So,
is it legal?
Well, this is a great question. So the abuse of power and the misuse of government power is a theme all the way through. So my big thing...
It's a theme of tyranny.
Well, it is. It's a theme of tyranny. But my big thing coming out of all of this is 5 simple words. Good people break bad laws. All right? Stop and think about it for a second. Good people break bad laws.
Rosa Parks.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right? Rosa Parks, or actually before Rosa Parks, was Claudette Colvin.
Yep.
9 months before Rosa Parks, Claudette Colvin did exactly what Rosa Parks did. And in fact, Rosa Parks cites her as her inspiration for doing what she did.
Perfect.
She didn't get the credit because she was pregnant out of wedlock. And so they kind of went, oh, we're going to hide you, right? We're not going to talk about you. We'll talk about Rosa. Now, full credit to Rosa. Like, I'm not taking anything away from her. But the abuse of government power is the theme that runs all the way through. I'll give you another example. So Avi Yemeni, great journalist. I'm a big fan of his, big friend of his, and I'll cop whatever flack. He's controversial. He's a bit of a live wire. He has a lot of haters out there. I'll cop the hate. Fine.
But he gets the views.
So he gets the news, and he does what I don't have the guts to do. I'll put my hand up and say, I couldn't do what he does, right? Yeah. He's amazing. But there were so many ways that government power was abused. They tried to shut him up by, arresting him and then like catch and release.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like a fisherman catch and release, but just to get him away from the protests. There was another person by the name of Monica Smith. Now, she was running a thing called Reignite Democracy Australia, which was a fledgling political party. And it didn't really have any traction, any support really at that time. Like, I don't say that to be insulting. She just started it. She just launched it, right? And they arrested her because she was encouraging people to attend protests. And what they were doing, no, I can see your face.
Crazy.
You need to make a noise. They can't hear your face.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. So she gets arrested because she's been encouraging people to engage in peaceful protests. Now, I need to clarify for listeners. When Australians say protest, by the way, your glass has a hole in the bottom. It's empty.
It's
already.
evaporation, mate.
It's
evaporation.
Yeah.
All of Simon's glasses have a hole in them. Every single one.
So fill her up again. I'll have to drink a bit faster this time.
I think you need to because
it doesn't
evaporation.
evaporate. Yeah.
Humidity, mate.
Yeah,
That's a healthy pour.
All right. So Monica Smith.
Simon, that bottle is big and it's almost empty. We've
are-
only been here 24 hours.
Listen, we'll make sure it is empty very, very soon.
I'm not even going to bother putting a top on it.
Abraham Lincoln has just
with
bought a
the ice.
crap ton of ice. No tonic. That ice is going to fill it up as it is. I've got like literally you could take it out in the Titanic with that thing. Like,
That's
what have
nice,
you done?
man.
All right.
What's that?
So Monica Smith. Now, the police stop her car because they're tracking her phone. Understand this. Her crime, so-called, is that she was encouraging people to engage.
Was there a warrant for to track?
No,
I
I
bet
don't
there
know if
fucking
there was a
wasn't.
warrant. Oh, there probably was not. Now, I need to clarify one thing with your listeners. When I talk about protests, I'm talking about Australian-style protests. I'm not talking about Black Lives Matter, burn half
Those
the
are
city
riots.
down.
Those are riots.
Mostly peaceful.
Right.
With-
So
with-
there's
with,
people
you know-
with placards going, please don't do that.
Correct. It's what you would probably call a rally.
There
Right?
you
That's
go.
probably how you would term it, right?
Yep.
So she was encouraging people to attend rallies. They pulled her over at the side of the road because they were tracking her phone. They had multiple vehicles. They arrested her. Now, here's where I get to the abusive process, the abuse of the law. It's same as what they did with Harvey Yemeni. Pick him up, drive him around for a few hours, drop him off in the middle of nowhere. They went to her and said, listen, you can be free tonight if you just sign these bail conditions.
Fuck
What
you.
they do.
Right?
That's what they do.
What were the bail conditions? The bail conditions were you have to shut down your political party.
Oh, that's
Now, this is Victoria Police, the law enforcement arm
God.
of government, telling someone that they have to shut down their political party. That is political interference in the most direct manner you can possibly imagine. It
Really?
doesn't matter that her party was tiny and was probably not going to affect an outcome. That's
That
not
makes it even
relevant.
worse, really.
Well, yeah.
Because
in a
they know
sense.
she was onto something. She was hovering over the target.
So they said to her, unless you do this, you've got to go to prison until a judge amends the bail conditions. And we don't know how long that's going to take.
Oh, and we know about our weaponized DOJ
Yes,
system
correct.
and all that
Same
shit.
thing
So
in
you got the
Australia.
same thing
Okay.
there.
So she had the courage to say, no, screw you, I'm not signing those bail conditions. And she spent 22 days in prison. And because of all of the COVID restrictions and fear, she spent most of that time in solitary confinement.
Well, that is under the even Geneva
That is a
Convention
war
rules. That's a war crime.
That is a war crime.
What's her name?
Monica Smith. Now, she's written a book called Cell 22. I recommend you Google it. Monica
Absolutely.
Smith, S-M-I-T, Cell 22. I wrote the foreword to her book. I commend her to you. Read her book. It's incredible to think that this happened in a so-called free country.
It really is.
But that's not the
crazy.
only example. We also had a guy called Marty Fokker. And
I beg your pardon?
yeah, yeah.
Can we
The
enunciate?
accent-
You already,
the accent-
you already
I
got
know,
us there.
I know.
You got us there.
Fokker, not fucker. Fokker.
Fuck.
Now German, obviously, or German extraction.
Jawohl, meine.
Now, okay, so one of our fellow podcast hosts is dying right now.
You can't even
Give me a fucking respirator, quick.
Now, he was
You can't make this shit up.
No, you can't.
he was an absolute champ. He was there at every protest. He was recording at every protest. He got arrested multiple times. Now, he gets arrested, and they tell him to turn his camera off. He goes, yeah, fine, give me a minute. He doesn't turn it off, and he stuffs it in his bag, still recording. So we've got audio. It's not good audio, but we've got it. And what we hear on his audio, because they waste your time, they make you sit there for ages. And there's other stuff just happening around you.
Yep.
And while he's sitting there is a senior sergeant talking to a junior officer, and it's captured on a hot mic, saying to them, we just trump up some charges so that we can hit them with bail conditions. It's all bullshit anyway. It'll just go to court and get thrown out, but it doesn't matter because if they come back, we'll just arrest them for breach of bail. That's almost word. I probably didn't get it word
that's
for word.
racketeering.
But that's almost word for word what we got on a hot mic from a ranking Victoria police officer.
Is he
thanks
still?
to Marty
Is he
Fokker.
still
That has
holding
got
his
to
As
be
job?
far as I'm aware,
dismissal.
no one actually knows who that individual officer is. As far as I'm aware,
I'd fire the whole fucking department.
Now-
But that has to be
If I remember
Now-
correctly, they actually tried to check to see if the device was recording, and
Oh, they
then
did, yeah.
and they thought it was actually turned off.
Yeah.
and they left it running as it was recording. So
Oh, wow.
Dumb
Yeah.
So they're
hearted.
incompetent as well as evil.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
so dumb.
And,
So
tho-
dumb.
and those guys, they are worse than the ones giving the orders.
Yeah.
Because the ones giving the orders, they have so many ulterior motives going on. They have money to be made. They have power and influence. But if you're just some little shitbag down the line,
They're doing it with
messing-
glee.
and
That's
you're
right.
messing with somebody else on your
Yeah.
level to that degree, that makes you worse than
Yeah.
the ones at the top. Those
That's true.
So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I'm aware I've talked a lot already. So, do you
no,
have
no,
questions
that's
rather
why
than-
we're here. It's a podcast.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Adrian, I'm running over you.
No, it's okay. I think one of the other things to highlight is that during this time, so there were two types of protests that were going on in Victoria at the time as well. You had people who were out there protesting, saying that they want freedom and they want less restrictions on their ability to go out and do work and engage in society. But we also had what were effectively Black Lives Matter aligned rallies as well.
That's true. Yeah, we did.
And
the
the
BLM
government
thing happened.
and the government treated them in two very, very different ways.
Well, who was sponsoring and funding that element? Because now we're going into that conspiracy
Well-
theory, which turns out normally to be a spoiler alert, that there was some very, very shady money behind sponsoring that element of society
Adrian-
and protest.
I'm sure you're about to explain what the police did when the Black Lives Matter protest happened.
Yes,
Sat on their hands, let me guess.
Or worse.
Oh, fuck it.
there wasn't too much that happened. Most of it happened just as the protesters wanted it to. And I think the worst that came out of it was a minor slap on the wrist with a minor fine, if that. But I think it may have even been cancelled.
You must have scrubbed it from your memory. There is a photograph showing a deputy police commissioner by the name of Luke Cornelius, along with two other high-ranking police officers, kneeling.
Oof.
Oh, that's right.
Ooh.
Kneeling.
We
at the
saw
Black
some
Lives
similar
Matter protest.
shit like that over here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when you bend the knee like that,
Yep.
you are opening the door to
A lot of things.
just
And that was
fuck me.
at the same time as they were arresting people like Zoe Bueller. Now, this went around the world. You might have seen
yes.
this. A blonde, skinny mum in her pajamas in her family home lounge room,
With the kids
being
around.
arrested and handcuffs behind her back in front of her kids.
Was she charged directly?
Her name was Zoe Bueller. She was charged with incitement, which is the same charge they used against me for 2 years and finally dropped only a couple of weeks ago.
For wearing pajamas.
No, because she made a Facebook post encouraging people to come to a park and voice their dissatisfaction
Oh
with
my
lockdowns.
God.
Now, this gets a little bit technical, but follow me here for a second. Our state was divided in two. They drew what came to be known as the Ring of Steel around Melbourne, metropolitan and suburban Melbourne. They had military on checkpoints. I'm not making this up. Military, Army, Air Force, Navy were recruited and brought across to stand on checkpoints to demand papers, please,
Yeah, that's
if you
insane.
wanted to
So-
drive out of suburbia into rural Victoria.
So is that, and they're about 20 miles out from
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
insane.
in the States, that would be mobilizing a standing army against your
It
own
would.
population.
That would be a
Now,
big deal.
And that is probably one of the most frowned upon elements that is a big no-no. So the generals that then complied with that need to get their nuts chopped off.
That's exactly right.
Because,
Yeah, agreed.
you know, when you give an order as a subordinate, you follow it. If it's a moral order. Now, if it's an immoral order, you can swing round and say to your superior officer, this is an immoral order,
Yeah.
go fuck yourself,
Fuck off.
I'm not
Yeah.
doing it. Now, you may get thrown in the clink for a short while and then go into a military court that's surrounded by, you know, his superiors and, you know, incestuous brotherly relationships with his officer cadre.
Yeah.
So you're already on the wrong end of a fucking horsewhipping, right?
Well, you would have thought they'd use private security, but unfortunately, private security was tied up at the hotels.
Oh, tell that story, Adrian.
oh,
tell that
for
story.
good
So-
Lord.
So the
We
Victorian
thought we had it bad.
Oh,
So
no, tell
the,
that story.
the Victorian state government, and this was actually, and there's actually video of Daniel Andrews saying this was their idea, and they thought it was a brilliant one, where they'd convert hotel rooms into effectively quarantine centres for people who would arrive either out of state or out of the country.
We're familiar with it.
Yep. And what would happen is it would be managed by private security who would make sure that these people would stay in their rooms and that COVID wouldn't be able to spread.
These are the brown shirts that then turn into the SS and the Gestapo.
No, the police were the brown shirts. These guys were just Muppets.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, at one of the particular hotels, which was just on the outskirts of the Melbourne CBD, on a laneway called Rona Lane, no less, if I remember correctly, Rona Lane.
Rona Lane. How appropriate.
Make it up.
They allowed COVID positive people, which they weren't aware that they were COVID positive at the time, to leave the hotel room, go downstairs, walk around outside, and intermingle with the people who presumably didn't have COVID, and then allow them to go back in. And this actually ended up resulting in an additional set of outbreaks.
Thank you, Abe.
Then the state government said, no, this isn't our fault. This is the federal government's fault because they need to set up federal quarantine facilities instead.
Which otherwise known as internment camps.
It's crazy.
Right? Federal quarantine facilities, otherwise known as internment camps.
That's exactly
It
what it
gets
is.
Yes,
worse
exactly what
because
it
this
is.
private security company was found on at least one occasion, we believe multiple occasions, the private security contractors were actually in the rooms of the people who were being quarantined, having sex with them, and obviously, spreading probably more than just COVID out of that. Now, it gets even worse, though, because 801 people died as a result of that particular outbreak of coronavirus escaping from that particular facility. Most of them in seniors' homes. I mean, that's who was most vulnerable to the
Right.
coronavirus, was people who are already old, already vulnerable.
That's actually because what happened in, I think it was upstate New York, somewhere
Same
in
thing.
the Northeast, they said, well, rather than they released COVID positive elderly into the retirement homes. And there was a catastrophic death rate, and they held their hands up and said, well, how could this be? This coronavirus must be lethal. Well, no,
if
they
you're
were vulnerable.
84 and you've already got 6 different things trying to kill you.
Well,
yeah.
that was another issue that we had in Victoria where Daniel Andrews would get in on his 1 hour long speech and he'd say, X amount of people have died today. But there was never a context. It was never, this 3 people died today. One of them was named Agnes. She was 97 years of age and she already had pneumonia.
Yeah.
There was never context around who these people were, because if they said that most of these people were elderly, already in either nursing homes or
already
hospital.
above the average age of death, by the way. The
By the
average
way.
age of death from COVID is above the average age of death.
All of that was missing. And without that context, people watching, as the news is, if it bleeds, it leads, and people are addicted to watching this because they're thinking
soundbite.
they're next.
Fear porn.
Yeah, that's one way to describe it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the other interesting thing, just to go back on to the private security matter and then it going to becoming a federal issue, is that then Victoria, Daniel Andrews then called to have a commission to review whose decision it was to bring in private security. Now, unfortunately, I can't recall who was at fault because the Premier couldn't recall who made the
So
decision.
this is an
either.
inside joke. This is very funny to me, but the rest of you are sitting there going like, what? Okay, so Daniel Andrews, the Premier of Victoria, along with all of the other relevant ministers and people who were supposedly in the room when that decision was made, went before a commission, which is where they're supposed to, it's like going in front of a court, right? You're supposed to tell the truth.
Hand on the Bible and all that good stuff.
And you're a public servant paid by public money, and this is to hold you accountable to the public. And they all sat there and time after time simply said,
I don't recall. Yeah, that's what our wankers do just down the road here.
Yeah. And it became a thing. It became a meme.
You get a congressional.
I think it was between 25 and 27 times he said
Something
it.
like that.
And there was one point where he said, well, I can't recall. Like, it was almost as though...
I can't say about that.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
almost...
Oh, no, I mean, I can't
almost,
recall.
It was almost as though a
I
lawyer said,
misspoke.
well, if you say that, you're technically not lying, because if you remember in the future, you couldn't recall back then.
Yeah.
I mean, if I went to a court, like if I was charged with a crime and the judge said, what happened here? And if I just kept saying, I can't recall, I would expect to be at some point either treated as a hostile witness or effectively...
You're a fucking liar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Basically.
Like, no, and we're talking about the highest office in the state.
Yeah.
We're
This
not talking,
is our version of a governor.
yeah.
Well, and let me ask you this: as Australians, how much does New Zealand's political, like Jacinda, how much does that influence you all? I mean,
I would say not at all, Adrian.
No.
What do you say?
Well, interestingly, in the Australian Constitution, New Zealand's still considered a state of Australia.
It actually is, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I knew there was something crazy with that. I've seen something with that.
So New Zealand is a very different system for two reasons. Number one, they don't have states.
Okay.
They have local councils and a federal government only, whereas Australia does have states.
Oh, wow.
Secondly, the federal government in New Zealand, and this is a really freaking bad idea. Anyone that's working on a constitution right now, if you're just forming a new country, this is a really bad idea. Don't do this. They have one House of Parliament.
So you just have to pass once.
Which means, and by the way, under the Westminster system, the Prime Minister is the person who has a majority in the lower house.
She's it.
So by definition, the Prime Minister has a majority in the one House of Parliament, and there is no one to hold them accountable. In Australia, we also have a Senate known as a House of Review. And the way in which people are elected to the Senate is deliberately calculated differently so as to provide a likely different result, which then creates a situation where, yes, the Prime Minister has a majority in the lower house, but is still going to get held with their feet to the fire by the upper house, by the Senate.
It's
New Zealand
kind of a House of Lords and a US
House of
Senate.
Commons.
It's a House of Commons and a House of Lords.
Yeah.
And a Senate.
And excluding Queensland, that's how it works in every state.
Correct. Only Queensland has followed the New Zealand system. Every Australian state has an upper house.
Although they did have two houses, they actually they destroyed it themselves.
That
Bad
is
idea.
very, very dangerous for any form of government to have that sort of power and control.
Yeah.
Because the only time you can hold them to account is out of the election. And 6 months
that's
out.
every 4.
Yep.
How many 4 years?
Every 3 to 4 years. But 6 months before the election, all of a sudden the roads are fixed up, things are sorted, and all of a sudden you forget about all the issues. And we had the same issue with Melbourne. As soon as it was time for the election, the roads were fixed, things were working, and then as soon as the election was over, everything returned back to business. There's no term limits, unfortunately.
We have a fairly common theme here that government in our era is actually rotten to the core.
Yep.
Correct.
I hope that sinks in with everyone that's listening. Right?
And it is possibly irredeemably so.
It's irredeemable until it gets broken fully.
Can I give you my theory on this?
Please.
Can I give you my theory on
Go
that?
for it.
All right. So, I've had a lot of time to think about this because I spent 18 months as a criminal, literally going out every weekend onto the streets, engaging in quote-unquote illegal protests. I've been tear-gassed. I've been beaten up with batons by police. I've had pepper spray in my eyes. I've been arrested and prosecuted for 2 years. I was never directly shot at with a rubber bullet, but I've been there when people have been shot at with rubber bullets. And again, we weren't rioting. We weren't burning shit down. We were there with placards and chants and slogans to voice our opinions in a way that is supposed to be free in a democratic society.
And unarmed.
Yeah, and we were completely unarmed.
So Martin Luther King, not Black Lives Matter.
Sorry?
Martin Luther King, not Black Lives.
Yeah, Martin Luther King, not Malcolm X.
Right.
Right. Let's use two contemporary examples. Now, here's the thing. What I realized and what I learned, and I then looked back in history to try and validate this, is what I'm observing. Does this hold from a historical perspective? I believe it does, and I'm going to put it to you now. Mankind has tried to limit the power of government in lots of different ways. We've written constitutions for republics. Yep. We've written constitutional monarchies. We've had bills of rights and Magna Cartas.
There you go.
We've had separation of powers and, different branches of government that are going to hold each other accountable. All of these were attempts to keep the government from getting too much power. That's what our objective was every single time. And I put it to you that every single one of those has failed at least once in history. And 100%. I put it to you that a lot of them are failing right now. There is only one thing that works. The only thing that limits the power of government is when the people reach the limit of their obedience.
We're there.
We need to be there.
We are there.
We need to be there.
Non-compliance.
Non-compliance. Peaceful, non-violent, non-compliance. That's what Gandhi called it, right? It was non-violent, non-compliance. And this is the stage that we're in now. And my fear is that people are not going to recognize that. And they're not going to engage in that. And by the time they
go straight to violence.
Well, by the time they realize that they should have been in civil disobedience, we're going to be in civil war.
Right.
So I'm preaching the gospel of civil disobedience in the hope that enough people get on board soon enough that we never get to the point, God forbid, that we get to the point that we're really actually shooting at each other. Heaven forbid.
No one needs that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say, because I remember when the first 14 days to flatten the curve came out, which was basically just a copy and paste from America.
Yeah.
We will literally, anything that we saw would be copied. And I remember having arguments with people where I said, if you do it once, it'll happen again.
Right.
And then the questions were, well, what do you know? Well, I don't know. I've been involved in politics since 2010. It's 2022. I've seen a lot. I've seen what's happened in America. I've had training from the Leadership Institute. I've studied history, same as all of us, because that's why some of us are conservative. That's why some of us are libertarian. We've looked at the past and we've seen the future.
Yeah.
And I just said, in a state like this, if we do this once, I guarantee it'll happen again. And I had friends, I even had family laugh at me and saying, we'll do this once and we never have to worry about it again. By the time we got to, I think it was almost 7 lockdowns, that was when the government lost almost the moral right to govern. Yeah. And all of a sudden, even though the numbers were still going up, even though we were still seeing all the same issues, there was no longer a daily press conference.
That's right.
There was no longer anybody talking about the issue. We just allowed it to evaporate.
Yeah.
There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government solution.
Correct.
Exactly. But we still suffered through 6 insane lockdowns. And for myself, like, once again, 1 hour worth of exercise a day is not much.
Oh, sure.
And as someone who was able to work, even with the energy I could burn, I felt like I'd watched every single thing that was on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and YouTube combined.
I bet.
And because the problem was, I would get home and you'd get to about 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, and you'd fall asleep for maybe 45 minutes to an hour before you'd wake up again, because you couldn't burn enough energy physically to be able to actually relax and unwind and sleep properly.
But I feel like the government across the world got what they wanted. They understood how far they could push the people and get by with it.
All right. So this was brought up really early on, and I never said what I meant to say. What we have now is a situation where people are standing up at the World Economic Forum as if their microphones are turned off. Like they seem to think that we can't hear them, but it's being live streamed to the world. And literally saying things approximating, I don't remember the exact quote, but approximating things like, we nearly got everyone to comply with lockdowns. Now we need to figure out what we need to do differently so we can get everyone.
The rest of it.
We nearly got everyone to take the mRNA vaccines. Right. We need to learn lessons so that next time everyone will do it.
We can nail it.
Actually,
that's their approach to this.
Actually, one of the other weird things with Australia, well, with Victoria actually, was prior to COVID happening, there were a number of seats which were green seats. So we're talking sort of progressive left, inner city elite, well-to-do. They care about the environment, but they've never actually seen the environment. Yeah. And
they think we're the problems on farms because a cow's farting while they sit in cities a bit.
Concrete.
Exactly right.
Yeah, we know.
So prior to COVID, there was some statistical medical data coming out showing that the majority of these people were having children and they weren't vaccinating their children because for whatever reason, they believed that their way of natural health and all the rest was perfect. As soon as COVID happened, it was interesting to see the shift that it was, you must wear a face mask. Everyone must be vaccinated. What is wrong with you? Are you what was it, COVIDiot? Which was one of the dumbest words I heard.
Wow. Anti-vaxxers.
Anti-vaxxers.
Well, that's how you belittle people.
Yes,
I mean, that's mind games.
Yes, but the thing was, but the switch in their mind to go from 1 second, they're anti-vax, to all of a sudden accusing anybody who has the slightest doubt about the vaccine. Now, I've taken the vaccine. I had a reaction to the second one. Luckily, in Australia, we only required 2 vaccines in order to be considered fully vaccinated.
Was everybody forced in Australia?
Coerced. They would say, we never forced you, but you're going to lose your job if you don't.
Yeah. So there was that component. I mean, I was willing to take it, but I was happy to wait at the end of the line because, once again, I was in my 30s. I was still relatively fit, minus the fact that I gained about, I think it was almost 210 pounds. I guess that's about 95 kilos.
You gained 95 kilos?
Yeah, well, as in, no, I became 95 kilos.
Right.
Because I didn't gain. That made me.
Knacker.
Yeah, exactly. I know. So the joke being there that if I was 195 kilos, I've done a very good job losing it.
Yeah.
So I went from 80 kilos to 95 kilos in the space of that 2 years. And once the restrictions were loosened, I literally had to go to the gym every single day to burn enough energy to get back into a proper sleeping pattern.
Yeah.
And even then, it still took about 6 to 12 months to be able to burn that weight off and get back to a healthy weight again. Now, there's no subsidies for going to a gym.
Yeah.
You've got to do that on your own volition. But I think, but I believe that some of the statistical data that came out was that across the board, every Victorian gained on average about 4 kilos. Now, I'm not sure what that is in freedom units.
It's about 8.8 pounds.
8.8 pounds. So every Victorian.
Hey.
9 pounds.
9 pounds.
One kid.
So basically every individual in Victoria on average gained roughly 8 pounds. And once again, that has effect on health as well. The other thing was wearing the face mask. Now, when we had, when SARS occurred, we actually had the Australian federal government say, these will not protect you against SARS. If anyone tries selling them, there'll be fines of up to $100,000.
Yeah.
Now we have COVID. Now, granted, I'm not a doctor, but once again, we're talking about a similar style of disease that gets spread by the mouth.
Yep.
Yet we're told, let's wear a face
So
mask.
what about microns?
Microns, yeah. A face mask that's designed on the packaging says for use one time only, maximum 25 minutes worth of use.
Yeah.
And yet we're seeing everyone that was wearing them all day
Days
long
on end.
and reusing them.
Yeah.
So imagine you're breathing in to something where there's a lot of moisture in there and you're rebreathing that in.
Yeah.
So people started having respiratory issues as well. Now, once again, the data is there, but it was never shown publicly.
Yeah.
And, once again, people say, oh, that sounds like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, but what does that tell you? That tells you that there's a manipulation of scientific evidence.
Yeah.
And it's a control
It ain't even
issue.
manipulation.
Well,
It's straight-
it wasn't even manipulation. It wasn't disclosed. Like the information was sitting there for anyone to see or read.
Flying through a
But
mission.
the average person would just go, I'm taken aback by this, and if that might save my life, I'll do it. But then when they start coughing and people are thinking, oh my goodness, I might have COVID, so most of the time it was just that they were having a respiratory issue from reusing
wearing
the same
the fucking mask.
5 days in a row
But
because
also they skewed the data so bad.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you had the flu, the common cold, everything was COVID.
was all bad.
Or if you got decapitated in a motorcycle accident, you died from COVID.
And for those that are listening, that's actually a thing.
Yes,
People
that happened.
died in car crashes and got put down as COVID fatalities. That's a thing.
well, I can't remember the exact details. Maybe it's just jet lag, but you might know, Topher, is I believe that doctors and nurses were paid a penalty, like a safety penalty, if they dealt with someone that was considered COVID positive.
Funnily enough,
remember.
I don't actually know much about the Australian situation,
Yeah.
but I do know that in the US, hospitals, the institution,
Massive
was paid
amounts of money.
more for
Massive.
every single case and every
Yes, they
fatality
did.
they
Yeah.
had.
So it's a
100%
perverse incentive.
Yeah.
But the PCR test that everyone was using
Yeah.
very commonly to say whether you had COVID or not couldn't actually tell the difference between flu or COVID.
Yeah.
And the reason I know that was a complete crock of shit is because all of a sudden the data for flu cases where the US would lose approximately 140, 150,000
Yep.
people a year from
Yep.
flu
Yep.
went to zero. There was no flu
Yep.
data. They said, oh, no one's got flu this year.
Yeah,
Fuck
took the year off.
If
Took
you're
the
a-
year off.
If you're a skeptic of what we're saying, go and find the flu data for 2020 and 2021 and ask yourself how that happens. And if the flu and the common cold have been miraculously eradicated and killed 0 people for 2 years, how the fuck did it come back in 2022?
Yeah, and you was talking about
It's called a reunion
the
tour.
mask.
The Rolling
Yeah.
Stones have done
Yeah.
about 30 of them now.
My
I'm
sister's
convinced
medical
we're
field.
related.
Yep.
And like during surgeries,
Yeah.
the surgeons, when they're performing surgery, they have nurses come in there and change their mask every
Correct.
20 minutes during the
Correct.
surgery.
Yeah.
That's right.
But during COVID, you can wear that mask all day, hang it on your rearview mirror all
right.
night, put it on the next day, maybe wear it in the shower.
But the
Well,
other
talk about the psychological
although-
effects too. Think about the children that had to look, the babies that had to look at their parents for 2 years,
Although-
not know what their faces look like. Kids
Yeah.
at 6, 7, 8, not facial expressions are so key because when you're trying to teach your kid or teach young kids, those facial expressions, they show you whether there's anger or happy. If you're only seeing the eyes, you don't know, and that's mess.
Well,
that's mess.
that was an issue in Victoria. We now once this is anecdotal evidence, so I mean it is what it is. But we did actually have children who one couldn't recognize faces because they hadn't seen them.
Yeah.
But they also felt safe wearing the mask, as in they didn't want it when they were allowed to go back to school. They refused to take it off because
Indoctrinated.
well, that's one way to describe it.
No, it's like Linus with his blanket
It is.
out of peanuts,
Yeah.
right?
But the other issue is though, because children didn't go to school for up to almost 2 years.
Yeah.
When children went back to school, all of a sudden they've gone from grade 3, 4, 5. They're now in grade 5 or grade 6. But you know what they're acting like?
Third
Grade
graders.
3, third
Yeah.
graders.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
there was this loss in maturity. There was a loss in learning how to socialize. These children have unfortunately been stunted in their growth, and now hopefully good teachers will be able to help get these kids caught back up.
I don't think it'll happen.
hard.
I think we'll have a generation across the world that we will
Stunted.
see in history would have suffered from this.
Look, all I can say is this. There's going to be somebody on this planet who's going to earn their PhD doctorate being able to take this research and go, look, this is what we know. This is where we are in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
How are these children performing from when they go from primary school, well, elementary school in America, to high school, all the way to, because we don't have a middle school, it's just straight to high school, straight to university and into the real world. If we find that we've got 24-year-olds acting like 21-year-olds or 35-year-olds acting like 35-year-olds acting like 25-year-olds, then we know, okay, this is something we need to learn from.
Okay.
But you don't think the government will crush that data?
No, look, I think in time people will be willing to talk about it. Same as thalidomide and other things like that. Eventually, it takes a bit of time. But I want to harp on this. Adrian is spot on, but I want to broaden this out. Over the course of those 2 years, where people had a very hard time accessing basic medical services, there were literally thousands upon multiple thousands of missing cancer diagnoses.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
We
true.
know in a population of 26 million people, roughly how many people are going to get diagnosed with cancer every year.
Now, that's the correct application of statistics, not a manipulation of statistics, which these fuckers have been doing for the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay. We know how many people we should have found with early stage cancer, and we missed them. And now we're going to find them with mid or late stage cancer. And
I was one of them.
Die. I'm sorry to hear that.
That's all right.
You doing all right?
Fucking right, I am.
All right. Now, understand that was done for health. It's for your health.
Yep.
There were an enormous number of younger people, grandchildren who never got to say goodbye to grandma and grandpa, and they will carry the psychological burden of that for the rest of their fucking lives because they had to sit on a Zoom call instead of holding their hand.
No proper goodbye.
Like, for no fucking.
We will be, not only will we be seeing people do doctoral theses on the difference in a young person's development from a schooling point of view, I believe that future generations will be doing doctoral theses on so many different aspects of the harmful medical outcomes. I mean, put aside whether or not the jab is causing side effects, which clearly the data indicates very strongly that it is. Put that aside for a second. The lockdowns in a place like Australia, where they were enforced with religious fervor for 18 months, the negative outcomes of that, I believe, have on their own outweighed whatever we gained.
And we haven't
from
even
COVID.
seen all the effects yet.
Correct.
We haven't. They're still slowly starting to.
Correct.
And it's worth remembering that a normal PhD thesis, a doctoral candidate takes 7 years to complete their study. So we're not going to find anything out for another 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Minimum.
It's staring us in the face.
Yeah.
Right, we've seen that isolating kids. My daughter was.
And how long is it going to take for us to figure out all the side effects and the harm done from the vaccine?
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation in itself.
Follow Ed Dowd. Follow Ed Dowd on Twitter. Follow Naomi Wolf. So I emceed an event where I had Ed Dowd as a speaker and Naomi Wolf dialed in online. It was in Perth, Australia. We already know that it's devastating. We just don't know how devastating. That's all that's left to figure out is how devastating is this.
And the mainstream don't want to talk about the devastation,
And
which
in
makes it
Australia,
hard.
you're not allowed to talk about
their credibility is absolutely fucking shot, and rightly so. The pharmaceutical companies that got behind all of this shit in the first place need to be held accountable.
Yeah.
But they never are. These same pharmaceutical companies dumped opioids on the Appalachian region.
You know how we do it?
25 years ago, saying, "Oh, these are the first opioids magically ever that aren't addictive," and they started handing them out. We are still to this day.
I will tell you how to do it.
That crushed mountain people.
You will penalise a pharmaceutical company if every single person says I will not take an investment in my 401k with any pharmaceutical company. If you dry their money up, you will fuck them. And you've got to withdraw all your funds from every single pharmaceutical company out there because they need fucking.
But they won't do it. That's the thing. Apathy.
Can I say something, though?
Yes.
It is not a coincidence. Oh, by the way, your glass has sprung a leak again.
Fuck me.
Like, holy shit,
Simon,
man. How bad are
you are a disrespectful host to your friends who you picked off the island hundreds of years ago.
Now, listen.
What would Lincoln say?
Listen, it is not a coincidence that the opioids were dumped on the people of Appalachia.
No, not at all. No.
All right? Why? Because the people of Appalachia are independent.
Yes.
And that is the thing that the elites fear the most.
Bravo, mate.
People who can stand on their own 2 feet.
We don't take orders.
And they will do whatever they can. If you don't believe me, if you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, fuck you. What do you know? Go back and have a look at the history of the British Army and the British Empire in China and India and how they used drugs, specifically the opioid crisis in China, as the way of completely destroying that country's ability to stand on its own 2 feet. This is an old play, and they are targeting the people of Appalachia because they are independent.
They can't be.
That's their greatest
cannot
fear.
be ruled.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're independent. We're strong. We don't back. I mean, there's histories. You got Blair Mountain with the Cold Wars. You got Athens, Tennessee, where they showed up and kicked the government out. You've got Franklin County, where we're from, where moonshiners fought back against the federal agents for years and years and years. Like, there's a spirit.
Yeah.
You know, it's a spirit, and they want to crush the spirit. And what better than opioids to do that? You know,
Pharmaceutical companies once again at the helm. Fuck 'em is what I say.
Yeah, this is not a coincidence. Governments now, unfortunately, and look, this has always been true to one degree or another. This has always been true. But of course, we're alive now. We weren't alive 100 years ago when they were also doing it. We're alive now, so we're seeing it and we're having to learn from it. Governments will stop at nothing to protect themselves.
Ruthless.
Right?
Or control the people.
Well, to control the people. So I have a saying, and my wife is sick of hearing it. The minute there is the word system, then the system comes first. Let me give you some examples. If your country has an education system, do you think that it's about education or is it about system?
it's about the system.
It's about system.
100%.
If your country has a justice system, is it about justice or is it about system?
This is prophetic.
Well,
right
this
here.
is
some of the best podcasting we've had in the 3
He's
years.
from Appalachia.
I'm loving it.
What he said.
This is phenomenal.
Hey, I want to come to Appalachia.
You're coming.
Right?
Oh,
You
you're
guys have
coming.
invited
Yes,
me.
you're
I'm coming
coming. Yes, you're
down.
damn
We're going
straight.
to blow some shit up. Yeah,
That's
all right. So here's the test. If a widow with no money has the most just cause in the world but doesn't understand the justice system, will she get justice?
Hell no.
She won't.
Not a chance.
If a pharmaceutical company with all the money in the world is as corrupt as shit, but they understand the system, will they get what they want? Of course they will.
They can afford a lawyer.
So it's not about justice, it's about system. Now, government is
That's
about
hell of
system
an
from
angle.
top to bottom.
I love
From
it.
top to bottom, it's about system. And it's the big boys. It's the people with money. They understand system. They can play system. They know how to work any system to their advantage. And that's what we're seeing.
And hopefully in this day and age of access to information and data, these fuckers can be exposed. And I think the exposure is your pants are down and you've got a small dick.
Big Pharma's never fixed anything. They just mask the symptom. They've never fixed anything.
Or they take credit for things,
True.
So, for example, they take credit for measles and other things like that. No, sewerage and fresh water did that.
Yes.
And they take
Yes,
credit
right.
for what engineering
A
did.
toilet helped us more than anything else in the world.
That's right.
Why
My granddaddy
actually?
died at 90 years old, had never been in a doctor's office. I got an aunt at 77, has never stepped foot in a doctor's office at 77.
Her breath
Let
is
me-
that
look,
bad. They
look,
won't
look.
let her in.
Right.
She is one of the. Do y'all have time for a story about her real quick? Just a quick
Oh, my
one.
God.
Yeah, I got time.
So
I got
look,
all the time.
Aunt Virginia Bay. This was about 10 years ago. Amos called me up, said, "They need some help picking up hay up here. You know, a couple of us out here. Throw it on the back
Middle
of
of
the wagon."
I'm sorry.
110 degrees.
The man dressed up as Abraham Lincoln, his real name is Amos?
Yes,
It is.
Amos.
Yes, legitimately.
That's perfect.
Isn't it? And
That is perfect.
That's what I thought.
Biblical. Well, he grew up Dutch Amish light. So
Yeah, Irish light, yeah.
So call me up. Let's go pick up hay bales. You know, the square ones, not the round ones with the tractor. So we're gonna put some work on it. It's 100 and some degrees almost. It's that time of the year. Need the help. Okay, perfect. I
That's
grew up on a
Fahrenheit.
farm.
Yeah. No, I got it.
Did the same thing growing up. So, no big deal. And so he calls me up. We go up there as a handful of us throwing up hay. Caleb Flores, shout out to him. He was up there with us as well. And, we're going around doing this thing. And Amos's aunt is out here in the field and she's up there. And now, mind you, imagine the dresses that the Amish wear, and she's out there in the dress and the bonnet.
It's a
hay.
barn raising.
Throwing hay. Yes, absolutely. Throwing hay with the rest of us. So we break away. Me, Amos, Caleb, and the fourth person who was with us, 4 men, take a hay wagon down to the barn and we start throwing hay in the top of it. In the time it took us 4 to throw 120 bales into a barn. Now, 4 men in their 20s and 30s into a barn.
It's like 30 seconds.
Not very long at all. Aunt Virginia May, by herself, with one person driving the truck, loaded and stacked 80 bales by herself and was down there waiting for us. She's like, "Are y'all done yet?"
Wow. And this woman's
Yeah.
90 pounds.
And she's 90 pounds. I looked at Amos. I said, "Amos," I said, "your aunt's DNA needs to be saved."
No.
As a 50-year-old, Amos looked at me and said,
She has a home remedy for everything.
This younger generation ain't shit.
compared to me.
70. That's 70 years old.
Billy's like, man, he's like, man, your aunt's kicking my ass. Something else. I hope I can work like that in my 60s. I was like, hey, Virginia May, how old is she? She's like, I'll be 72 next month. Billy's like, fuck.
Oh, no, I mean, and this is how we are. This is how these people are. This is how it is. I know you actually, this is crazy because we're so far into this show and you did a film, and I want to get to that because that's a huge part of it. I want to get to that. But before I want to ask a question, and y'all toss this around and think about it. For those few years of COVID, for all of us that resisted, for the people that refused, and for me personally, my wife was pregnant with our second child.
Yeah.
The day it came out and they said lockdown, I looked at her and I said, do not believe a damn thing they tell you. Do not support this lockdown. Do not anything they come out with. And it took her a while to realize because, she doesn't pay attention as much as me, and she shouldn't have to. We shouldn't worry about these things. But I know
you're the man of the house. That's your job.
If the government says do something, 99.9% of the time you do the opposite, you're going to be right. It's really that simple. So we faced her, and more specifically her, because I'm a blue collar guy. We faced her losing her job if she didn't get this vaccine, which my son was pregnant. She was pregnant with my son. And I said, absolutely under no circumstances will we faced losing our livelihood.
Yeah.
We faced ridicule, all this kind of crap. And here we are 2 years later. And a lot of these people are coming around now and saying, oh, shucks, man. We all said some bad things and did some bad I have a hard time looking at you and saying, right, I forgive you or not. Because
I don't.
Be dead. You want to be dead?
No.
I said at the house with my wife.
I'll punch you in the damn face first.
Exactly. He sat there and cried. She was willing to walk. Because they were going to force, she works for the railroad, they were going to force her. And she was like, Amos, I don't want to take it. I was like, don't fucking take it. We'll figure it out.
No.
Yeah. And she was like, I will walk.
Yeah.
And well, then they come to their senses.
Yeah.
Right before. But
they didn't come to their senses.
Right. Listen, I've butted heads with very prominent Australians on this. I've been on a stage at a conference, hundreds of people sitting there in the audience live, and they've tried to say to me and say to the audience, we didn't know.
Oh, bullshit.
Not good enough.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. If you actually don't know,
why'd you say you did?
At the time, I don't know.
Exactly.
What they said at the time was do as you're fucking told.
That's right.
That's what they said at the time. Now, I've got no issue with people that took the vaccine. There's a whole bunch of good reasons why you might do that, right? Let's say you're a father. You're trying to provide for your kids. You don't want the vaccine. You suspect the vaccine. You think it might be dangerous, but you're bullied into it, and you're going to lose the ability to put food on the table for your kids if you don't take the vaccine.
It was psychological war.
You take the vaccine at that point, I don't disrespect you, right? I go, you know what? Listen, you were put in a spot you should never have been in. Yep. And you made the choice that you believe was the right one.
I'm not going to hold you to the fire on it. You're bloody right.
That's exactly right.
You should some, though. You should a little bit, because if you keep complying like that and you don't stand up, then we keep getting...
No, listen, okay, I've got a lot to say on that. I'll come to that in a minute. I've got a lot to say on that, right? But there are people that were bullied, that were forced, and so understand this. Their family was weaponized against them. And their righteous and right responsibilities became the weapon of the enemy, the weapon of the government, to force them to do things that they knew were wrong. Now, I look at my situation, okay? I was on the front line of the pushback from the very first anti-lockdown protest, right? I was releasing videos in March 2020. I was speaking at protests by April 2020. I went all the way. He's filling up my glass.
Fucking evaporate this one.
He's filling up my glass. All right. I went all the way through till there were hundreds of thousands of us on the streets of Melbourne City, the biggest political protests that my city has ever seen, because of the movement that I was a part of. I don't claim credit, but I was a part of it from the very, very beginning. But I do not judge people.
Knowing there's going to be repercussions.
Sure. But I do not judge people that made a different choice to me, because their calculus was different. You know what? We didn't plan this, but it worked out this way. My wife is a mortgage broker, right? She gets loans for people who want to buy houses, okay? She was already set up to work online. She was already set up.
How convenient.
All the ID verification, all that stuff online. So the reality for me was my income ended. right? The business I invested a lot of money into trying to create this. It was a go-karting business. I won't go into it.
We love go-karts.
That died, right? And that dream died. 6 years of work died thanks to COVID. But that's not
Thanks to the
important.
government.
Well, not overnight, over 2
Thanks to
years
the
of
government.
inflation. Thanks to the
Not COVID,
government.
thanks to the
Now,
government.
but our bills were paid because my wife had a business that was already, by good fortune, by the grace of God, was already set up to deal with the circumstances we were faced with. And the bottle is empty. If you can't tell from the way I'm talking already, the bottle is empty.
It's a tragedy.
All right. But
Where's the butler?
for other people, their circumstances were different. And I can't judge them for that because my circumstances were not a matter of planning. It was a matter of the grace of God and good fortune.
No, and I agree with that. And you shouldn't judge because at the end of the day, it's up to God to judge. You know what I mean? So you shouldn't judge, but at the same time, some way, shape, or form, and maybe I don't know how to put it into a language that makes sense. I think Tim Pool does a really good job of it, but
Sure.
But look, some way, shape, or form, we have to figure out that a lot of people traded temporary inconveniences for something that's going to cost them very, very long term. Like if you're not willing to step up now and say, okay, it's going to be tough and my kids might have some trouble for a few weeks eating. We might have, whatever the case may be. But by giving in, you're going to make it that much harder on your kids 20 years down the road because they might not have, you know what I mean? Like you don't judge and you try and be empathetic and understand, but we still have to be aware. We still have to be aware. We have to understand that you had an opportunity. You should have stood up no matter what. Because
hang on though. Yeah, this is where that judgment becomes a bit of an issue because what we faced was probably the biggest global psyop.
Psyop, that word.
And there's also exactly where we're at.
Yeah.
And I can't blame someone who fell for a psyop.
And there was a huge difference between me as a farmer. I didn't. It was much different than somebody lived in a city.
You
that had
fucking
to.
lucky bastard.
Yeah.
No.
That was a corker, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look. It is a little bit
We had
easier.
a garden. We had a farm. We raised our own beef. We got our own butcher shop. We didn't have to worry about nothing.
But that's why I don't judge. That's why I don't judge because it was easier for
Nobody
me.
died
Because
and
my
made me
wife
cheat.
had a business that made money even in the middle of lockdowns. I don't judge.
Yeah, and we shouldn't judge, but we have to find a way to let these people know.
No, you're right.
You can't.
Hold accountable.
Okay.
Well,
So here's where I'm at, right? And I'd love for you guys to argue with me. Look, one of our hosts is falling asleep. He's drunk too much.
this is 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, he's drunk too much. But listen, I want to put this out there, all right? Each and every one of us, and this is my statement, this is the hill I'm willing to die on. People obeyed because of the excuses they made. That wasn't supposed to rhyme, but it did. I'm going to run with it. Now,
You're a poet and you didn't know it.
I didn't know it.
Fucking
All right.
right.
All right. So we have footage, and you'll see this in my documentary, Battleground Melbourne, battlegroundmelbourne.com. You can watch it for free. Battleground Melbourne. You'll see a police
I'm gonna watch
officer. You'll see a police officer talking to a protester in that documentary. And he's saying, listen, I don't want to arrest you. I don't want to charge you, but I have to because my wife has lost her job and I've got to put food on the table. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what he said, basically. Now, what I said about that in a keynote address at the closing of the Australian Libertarian Society conference in 2023 was, you have a responsibility to organize your life in such a way that when your test comes, when your opportunity to compromise or to stand your ground and do what you know is right comes, that you don't compromise, that you do what you know is right.
But it's hard to be in that position.
Okay.
But set yourself up.
It's hard work to be in that position. But that's what I'm about now. That's
Set
my
yourself
sermon.
up.
That is what I am preaching.
Set
Get
yourself up.
yourself into the place where you can make the hard choice. Because if you make the easy choice,
Where you don't have to
It's
make
going to be the wrong
here's
one.
the thing, you have to live with yourself for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
Yeah.
It feels easy in the moment, but when you have to live with yourself for another 10, 20, 30, 50 years, knowing that you compromise,
Having bent the knee.
when you know you shouldn't have, that's fucking hard. So how about all of us make a pact? We make an agreement that we are going to get ourselves organized so that we have food, We have water. We have multiple sources of income. All right. Okay. I get
Passive income,
Passive income if you can. All right.
if you're lucky
But
enough.
multiple sources at the very
And
least. So
scratch the bill.
if your job is threatened, there is at least something else.
Well, that was
There's something else
that is the
there.
exact purpose of me starting this show 3
Okay.
years ago was
That's exactly
find your local people, find your local
Yeah.
farmers, get invested in them, get invested in anybody local
okay.
that produces anything.
I have moved out of Melbourne City. Melbourne is a city of 4.5 million people. I've been there since I was 2.5 years old. Don't judge me. My parents were the ones who moved me there. All right. I was 2.5 years old. I've lived there ever since. I've traveled, but I've lived there ever since. I've moved out of there into a small regional center surrounded by farms where
Good
our
move.
food comes from.
You know where
Where
it comes.
the water comes from, right? Because I understand what's happening in the world today. And you've got to put yourself in a position where you have the strength to follow your conscience rather than the fear that makes you obey. That's the lesson.
As you have
And
a government that keeps you from selling your neighbor meat.
Yeah? Oh, no, fuck them.
I agree.
I'll buy meat off my neighbor.
That's crazy.
well, we never,
we've
we
all-
would never,
Buy meat.
ever buy meat from our neighbors.
Look,
or
the bunny ears right now. I'm getting bunny ears. I'm getting the inverted
not
commas.
here as we sit in our nation's capital with. you
Listen,
know,
listen, there is not a single person at this table that would break the law on the record.
never.
Okay, never. No, I wouldn't even dream of it. But my slogan for my life is that good people break bad laws. And if you search for goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com, you'll find my website and you can buy my book.
I think that's what I'm going to name this show is Good People Break Bad Laws.
Now,
I
think it's already got a trademark on it.
Self-promotion
I-
win.
I kind of love that. And
I'm telling you, I mean, he's an Appalachian as hell.
oh, he knew it. He knew it.
We'd welcome him to Callaway in a heartbeat.
Let's start bringing
listen,
in the Aussies and
listen,
kicking out the
okay,
Brits.
no. Shut up, all of you. I've never shot a 50 cal. If I come
I
to
got one.
Appalachia, will I shoot a 50 cal?
Or
Yeah.
a Israeli Uzi.
Okay, I want to blow something up with a 50 cal.
I've got one.
Okay,
No
I'm
problem.
there.
You want to blow stuff up with
Name the
right?
time, name the day.
Oh,
I'm
you
there.
name the time and day. We're there all the
All
time.
right.
We're there all the time.
Although, Topher,
We'll do it off record.
We don't leave.
one other thing that we forgot about Melbourne, I'm not sure if this affected anyone in America, toilet paper.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so actually, Adrian, that's brilliant. That's a great time to bring it up. You've said like 5 words in the last hour,
Yeah.
and toilet paper was 2 of them. Listen,
That's fairly essential.
listen. I don't know what happened in America,
Oh, it's
But-
shitty.
but in Australia,
There were
in
wars.
Australia, people were having
Full
Yeah,
of
Fights at Walmart looking for
punch-ons.
a 72 roll.
People
pack of
were being
toilet
put in
paper.
hospital
Yep.
over a toilet paper. Now
There's
this
that
is
supply chain shit.
oh, this is what I'm about. Listen, it hasn't launched yet. If you go and search my Topher Field stuff, you won't see it yet. But maybe in a couple of months you will. I'm hoping you will. Preparation, not like prepper.
No,
not
no,
like,
no. I know what you're saying.
Not like disconnecting from life. Okay, but
Sitting
being
on your hill.
ready. Preparation, being ready. How long? Okay, hypothetical thought experiment. All right, and I mean this for each and every one of you, the ones that are looking at me and the ones that are too drunk to make eye
I
contact.
don't know
Yes,
what you're talking about.
yes, I'm looking at you. Yes,
What are you talking
all right,
For a long damn time.
you're right. You can still make eye contact. You're not too bad. Abraham Lincoln, you're doing all right.
For a long,
All right.
yes.
Listen, if every single input and output from your property ceased, how long would it be before you had to leave your properties? I'm talking electricity, water, gas, anything else in.
I don't think.
And I'm talking sewerage out,
Well, I mean,
right?
Travis,
I'll go. I'm going to hit you with this
Stop.
off the bat.
right?
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. All right, you're in a good place.
average.
You're in a good place. Listen, in Texas a couple of years ago, I think it was 5-6 years ago, a winter storm hit
Uh-huh.
where their nuclear power plants,
And the solar.
the cooling lakes began to freeze, and they had to shut down the nuclear power plants because, unlike the rest of the US, which is a separate grid, they couldn't deal with ice on their lakes. They couldn't deal with it. They shut down the nuclear power plants. As a result, over 700 people died. Now, they
Froze to
died
death.
as a result of traffic accidents because they don't have snow tires in Texas. They don't have chains in Texas. They died because they... fucking hell. Stupid Darwinism at work.
Froze to death.
They
didn't
brought...
freeze to
No.
death.
A few did. But
few
they
did.
brought barbecues inside their house. They lit the burner and they died of carbon monoxide poisoning.
But
how stupid.
they probably should have had.
That's a gene pool depletion issue.
It is. Look, honestly, thank you for taking yourself out of the gene pool. I appreciate it.
Amen.
Future generations appreciate it. But the reality is, forget what the government's doing. Forget all of that stuff. Look at what nature is
Be
doing.
responsible for you.
You have to be able to look after yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you're a man, and I don't say like a male, no, if you're a man, you have to be able to look after your family. That means that you have to be able to survive if the electricity, the water, the gas, the sewerage all stop. What are you going to do?
But you can't do it by yourself. That's a
No.
community.
No, I agree. That's
takes a
a
village.
brilliant
And
point.
that right there
That's
is-
a brilliant point.
That is where we're at.
Okay.
You get your
from
medical. You have all that lined up ahead. That's where we're at.
You're from Appalachia and you're dressed like Abraham Lincoln, and I'm drunk. So I don't think you know
Uh-oh.
how deep what you just said is.
You might be surprised.
cannot do it by yourself.
No.
All right, that's Appalachian wisdom.
But
coming
if
to
you have a hydroelectric dam close by your house and one of your buddies is the man that builds
No.
everything in his machine shop, I can keep power on for a long damn time.
Yeah.
You got firepower. You
Now
hold it out.
listen.
But you don't do it by yourself. You do it with a village. You do it with a community.
Okay.
You,
So,
anybody will carry
Two
a
things.
gun.
Two things. The economy of scale. All right.
Fuck
So-
the economy.
No.
No, it's
The
economy of scale.
This
That's
is
very
so
important.
This is so important. People who become preppers think I'm going to do everything myself. No, you fucking idiot.
All you're doing is you're
That's
setting
the
everybody
worst.
else up because they're going to come in and take everything.
We
That
had a
is
giant
the
conversation
worst.
on the way up here about that.
Yeah.
MREs, fuck off.
No. If you think you're going to do everything yourself, you're going to
Never
fail.
gonna
You're
happen.
going to die. Okay. Have you ever played a
But you're
computer
going to do
game?
it slowly.
You are an ammo drop for everybody else. You're going to die and someone else is going to come across all of what you've done and go, okay, I'll take that. You're an ammo drop for everybody else if you don't incorporate economies of scale. You have to incorporate community. This is so
We're
important.
in an awesome spot for
Yeah.
that.
Oh, in Appalachia. Listen.
Where we're
The
at, we're
zombie apocalypse is going to happen.
Yep.
And the last place on Earth that is going to have human beings that aren't zombies is going to be Appalachia. Right? Because you guys get it.
Well, we've tried to fight these cave dwellers out of Tora Bora in Afghanistan for 15 years.
Listen.
and kicked them out.
No.
Can't kick us out
Don't
of
talk me. No. Listen. Talk to me about the cave dwellers out of Washington, D.C. Those are the cave dwellers you got to
And
fight.
zombies. Fucking motherfuckers.
Oh, they're fucking zombies. You got to
Tell 'em,
fight
Abe.
them.
You tell him, Abe.
You're on the money, Topher, I've got to tell you.
Listen, I'm on the
sorta
money
like
and I'm
people, I
also
like you,
taxed.
Simon.
There we go.
It's a good place to
That's a
be.
beautiful place.
But we live in an awesome place for survival.
Listen, if Australia doesn't work out for me, I've moved into a rural area.
It's a long
I'm
road.
surrounded by farmers. They know me because I've been a political commentator since 2009. I've been talking about irrigation. I've been talking about farmers. I've been talking about them. Right? They love me.
We're the devil.
So when it all goes south, I'm going to survive longer than most. But if I don't survive long enough, I'm getting on a boat. I'm coming to the US and I am hiking to Appalachia because you guys will be the last people standing.
And have a contingency plan already.
Oh yeah.
Well,
and have
right.
been.
You know
Oh,
what
yeah.
you need to do,
Well, as an
Topher?
Australian, you need to make sure that you go through Mexico first, over the border, and then you
You'll be
Listen, so
and
long
they'll
as
give you
Biden-
choose your
so long as
path
Biden is still the president,
They'll give you
that
$9
border
grand
will
on
be
a
wide
credit
open.
card.
Oh yeah,
Just-
I'll
I've been
give you
thinking
a
about
bus
going to Mexico and coming
I'll get
back
a
in and
bus
get
to
the crap out of
Appalachia
that shit
from the
that's
Mexican
speaking
border.
I'm fucked.
I believe you need to do a documentary about Appalachia. I'm just saying. And I know exactly where it starts.
How funny has that?
I'll have to loan you my drones.
All right. Well, listen, I'm up for anything. Like, I did a documentary about Battleground Melbourne, battlegroundmelbourne.com, self-promotion.
Do it.
Yes.
Perfect.
Battlegroundmelbourne.com. You can watch the documentary for free. We've won 14 awards around the world, Berlin, America, Australia, different places. We won the best libertarian ideals at the Anthem Film Festival.
You're on fire, mate.
In 2022. Go to battlegroundmelbourne.com. Do it right now. I know you're listening to the best podcast, the Appalachian podcast. I know you're listening to the best podcast on earth, but open up another browser. Go to battlegroundmelbourne.com. You will not regret it. I can barely pronounce regret.
Regret. There was a bit of a stutter.
It took me three three attempts.
There you
All
go.
right. I'm having way too much fun. But listen.
Come and see us.
But listen. The fact is, history tells us that the limit of government power is the limit of our obedience. For as long as we go along with it, the government wins. It is only when we say, no, you don't have the authority.
What's the secret
You
ingredient
don't
to
have
get
the
enough
right.
people to say enough's enough?
Okay.
Where's
Okay.
that secret ingredient?
That is a great question. What is the secret ingredient to make sure enough people say enough is enough? Lockdowns.
That would do
It
it.
did, but it,
COVID.
That would do it.
That's
If
the
that don't
biggest.
do it for
no,
you,
no,
I can't fucking help
it
you.
hasn't done it. No, don't say it didn't do it. It hasn't done it. Have
No.
it did
you,
open eyes.
Have you been reaching out? Have you been getting to people? Honestly, I believe that COVID was the greatest opportunity that ever presented itself to libertarians.
Yes, indeed.
Because we can give an explanation. We can talk to people and say, listen, this is what you just experienced. Now,
Everything
do
we've
you
been
want
preaching
something
about.
better?
Everything we've been preaching. Yes.
That's what we do.
All right.
And it took a minute. It took a minute to get Simon there. And even that, because for years and years and years, we've had these discussions. We have these talks. We bounce ideas off of each other. And just at some point in time, you realize that you figure you have that aha moment. And the coolest part,
You need to talk.
the coolest part was back in May when we had Spike on for the first time, and Spike is sitting in between Henry and Simon, and both have this aha moment. But like, well, there it is. And even for me here, and especially lately, I got to be honest with you, the libertarian moniker, the politics side of being a libertarian, like, has just infuriated me, and couldn't understand it for a bit because, when I first started hanging out with Chip, he was like, I don't really get into the politics side of things. And it makes perfect sense. It's like, I'm libertarian philosophically speaking. Like, that's how I want to live my life.
By even libertarian, you're putting yourself in a box.
Well, I'm saying, but that's why it's a philosophy. I try and live by the libertarian philosophy.
I'm Amos. Fuck everything.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, if you have to put it into some kind of
pee too?
context, if you have to put it in some kind of context, that's kind of the philosophy I want to live by when it comes
Without staggering.
politically speaking. Now, obviously, you follow the Bible, you follow God, in my personal opinion, because that's going to tell you more than you could ever understand. You follow God, you follow the Bible, it will tell you everything you need to know. But when it comes to the cultural aspects of things, yes, libertarian as a philosophy, but the politics of it have really irritated me an awful lot lately as well. They really have. I mean, like, I take here, in the United States, in the past 4 years and now coming up on this next upcoming election, there has never been a more prominent opportunity for libertarians to get on that national stage
And make a difference.
If nothing else, they get up there and at least force those two assholes that are in the part of the duopoly to at least answer some questions that we need to know. And they fall on their faces.
How many parties in
Fall on their
Australia?
faces.
So there's two major political
two ma-
parties. So
just
you've
like
got
here.
so it's a bit reversed in Australia. So you've got the Liberal Party, which is actually the centre right and small L libertarian-ish party. So sort of more lowercase liberal. So liberal in the traditional sense.
So liberal and libertarian.
Well, you do get some libertarians, but it's more effectively
You have two main
conservatives.
parties and libertarians like a lower third
Yeah.
party.
Okay. I'll start again. Sorry. So you've got the Liberal Party of Australia. So that's where your conservatives and your small L liberals in the classical sense are.
It's kind of like most Appalachians.
Yep.
They're small L libertarians.
Yep.
They're fine with a little bit of government, but just leave me the hell
Yep.
alone. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got the Australian Labor Party, otherwise known as just the Labor Party. They're effectively your version of the Democrats. And then from there, you've got a few minor parties. So you've got one party that's sort of centre-right populist, which is called One Nation. And then you've got one that's on the left, which is the Australian Greens, which are always the inner-city elite who always seem to know what's best for everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they
without any understanding of actually what. I know exactly. Yeah.
But there is I think there is a Libertarian Party, but their success has been a bit up and down, but they do exist.
Well, I have actually followed it quite a bit over
Yep.
the past couple of years, like the Australian Liberty Movement.
Yep.
A big reason is because Spike has been down there once or twice. Or I know he went down there here very recently, you know, for a few weeks and hung out.
Well, one of the interesting things is Australia does have quite a few libertarian conferences. So we've got the Freedman Conference, which started about, I think, almost 10 years ago, I think now.
More than
yeah.
10, yeah.
And I think you'd know the rest of them. I mean, we've even recently, even for the Conservatives, CPAC started off in 2019, which oddly enough, I was actually in DC when CPAC Australia was announced. Couldn't find who was organising it until I got back to Australia. I got in contact with the director and he said, we've got maybe 100, 125 people coming. And then someone from the Labor Party went into federal parliament and said that this was going to be I think it was a conference of hate.
Yeah.
Next minute, we've got 1,500 people registered for the conference, and it's been promoted ever since. So, sometimes your enemies can be your best friends.
Advertising is good
advertising.
I'm glad to see it moving in that direction in Australia as well. And like I said, just here, I've just been because I've always been kind of non-political, and I said, well, these. LP, the Libertarian Party, some of these libertarians, they're starting to get some fire in their ass. I like a lot of the things they're saying. And then you have this whole, the last few years, we all of a sudden have all these big prominent personalities. And we're like, hey, these people are the ones you need to latch onto and let them go. And they fall flat on their face. Like, we got Spike running around here. Me and Chip have talked about
Spike's
this many
amazing.
times. Spike,
Yeah.
This is why I've fallen out of favor with the Libertarian Party is when they, for whatever reasons, whoever they may want or whoever they have ideas of having in there, whether it worked or not or didn't work the entire time, you should have been right up Spike's ass, begging him and pleading him, come out every event, get out here. If for nothing else, at least challenge the other people.
So listen,
that is a man who can get in front of Donald Trump and Joe Biden and actually hold them accountable.
Hold his own.
Fire.
He could hold his
fire
own.
and intelligence.
Spike is a,
but you go against the big party, man, dude. That's a tough seal on the butt. Yes.
Listen. Spike is the reason I'm here at the Students for Liberty conference.
He's the reason we're here. He's the reason we're here.
Right. So he heard me give the closing address to the Australian Libertarian Society conference, the Freedman Conference, as it's called in Australia. He heard that. He said to me, listen, that message, that closing address you gave, that's what America needs to hear. That's what all of the world needs to hear. So Spike, look, listen, you're talking my language. Spike's amazing. But we cannot be dependent on a personality. We cannot be sitting here saying there is a person that is our leader. We're libertarians, for fuck's sake, right? We don't follow individual. We're not like Nazis following.
No,
Hitler,
and that's the
right?
crux. That's the crux. But given in the system we're in, and that's how given in the system we're in, you have to look at it and say, okay, if we're going to play on their playing field, who is the best person to put out there? And honest, and Spike is a friend. We're here because of him. He has come to the mountains. He has fired the cannon. He's fired the weapons.
Yeah.
He's come hung out. And for that reason, when they invited us up here, we took it because he's been a great person. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. As libertarians, yes.
Yeah.
Look to yourself first.
Yeah, correct.
But if you're going to look for a spokesman, and maybe that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody better out there than him and the LP just as shit in the bed.
Yeah.
Chip?
Yeah, I don't even mean to talk about it. It's just
it's yeah.
But as you say, ultimately it shouldn't come down to a person because as people we're fallible. So it's the ideals. Sort of, as an Australian, and I'm sure Topher's the same, we look at the American flag and we understand why the American flag never yields at Olympics, what it stands for, the values behind it. It's something that we can look at as Australians and go, this is something that we love, not because we're Americans, but because we understand the values behind the American flag and what it stands for. Just as for libertarians. Now, I might not be a full libertarian, but you know what? I see the torch. I see the flame. And as a conservative who steals a few libertarian values,
Yeah.
I look at it and I go, I am so thankful that we've got libertarians because you know what? They hold me from me abusing my beliefs and powers as well. They go, you know what?
Yeah.
Your view there might be just a little too much. That's government intervention. You know your values better than that. And that tells me I need to take a step back. There's something more to it. It's the ideals.
All right. So you're familiar with the Overton window.
Yeah.
The Overton window is this idea of what's acceptable.
Yep.
What society will allow you to say, right? If conservatives were right up against the edge of the Overton window, they would quickly leave because they don't have courage. That's what conservatives don't have courage. They will quickly flee from the edge and they'll head towards the middle. So what it requires is libertarians to push that window all the way out.
Push it open.
And say, hey, we're going to talk about this and you're going to be okay with it, whether you like it or not. And what that allows, and I learned this from an Australian journalist who was the most popular journalist at the time. He was literally the only guy that was left on the conservative side, on the non-left side. And he had the whole playing field to himself. And he wrote a book. And in the foreword of the book, he said, I want to thank all of you journalists who are on the left, all of you people who didn't compete with me, all of you people who were so far over there that really it didn't matter. You weren't relevant to me at all. And he wrote a book. And I learned from reading that foreword and reading that book, you know, we sit there and we go, okay, what about no government? And conservatives go, what? Right? But the fact that there is a conversation to be had, the Overton window gets stretched out all the way to there. And now they have to factor that in the conversation that they do have.
They have to think about it.
They have to think about it. They have to acknowledge there are voters that support that. And that's something that libertarians achieve. You know, people say, oh, libertarians, what have they ever done? They've never had a prime minister. Well, okay, maybe Argentina changes that.
Well, we got Millie.
Maybe Javier Milei, maybe he changes that. But let's put that aside for a moment. Okay.
That's very recent.
They've never had a president. They've never had a prime minister. They've never had a head of state, but they've changed the conversation. They've changed what conservatives can talk about and consider normal. Because we've seen so many conservatives compromise on the progressive side. And I'm doing air quotes here with my fingers, which you can't see because you're listening to a podcast. We've seen so many conservatives compromise on the so-called progressive side, right? But once libertarians are introduced, they can't compromise anymore because they know, based on the popularity of that libertarian, that, hey, there's votes over there. There's people I need to appeal to over there. So I can't go too far the other way.
And people with conviction.
People
and
with
morals.
conviction. And people who are not going to compromise.
Not to where you want them to anyway.
And in the end, from a political point of view, that's what matters.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Topher, do me a favor. Let's do one quick shuffle. I don't want to put my dick on your shoulder, mate.
All right. I'm going to move out of the way.
Look, I know there's a dinner coming up.
Because trust me, I do not want his dick on my shoulder.
It was a very polite warning.
I know there's a dinner coming up soon that you want to make it to, so we don't want to keep you. I would love to keep you here longer. I could sit here and talk all freaking because I love y'all.
Hey,
y'all were some of
when I come to Appalachia to blow up some tannerite with a 50 cal, because that's what y'all have promised me.
That's how we roll.
Okay,
we'll deliver.
Absolutely.
I'm going to shoot a 50 cal into some tannerite when I come to you. Yeah.
We'll take care
So-
of that.
Okay.
But you have to promise me.
You may not want to do a 50 cal into tannerite. I've got another round for that.
Okay.
So
He gave me a wink. I trust him.
although
Adrian.
if you can film it, because one day when Topher's up on the national news, that needs to be the video clip that's actually shown on.
It would be rude not to.
In Australia, when they try and tan me and they try and cancel me, he's a pro-gun psychopath.
Blowing up tannerite on
Right.
national TV.
And they're not psychopaths doing what they're doing
Oh,
with
they're
lockdowns and all that shit. Fuck 'em.
Psychopaths. Listen,
Don't
they're going
turn
to
the
try and
narrative
cancel.
on us. Don't you fucking dare.
They're going to try and cancel me. That day is coming. I'm almost a little bit offended that it hasn't come yet. I'm like, am I nothing to you?
No. I think
am I not
I'd be offended.
significant?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a little bit insulted that they haven't really properly. I mean, they've prosecuted me. They tried to put me in prison. I guess that's something.
We know that we're on an FBI list.
Yeah. Oh, for
Officially.
sure.
That has been
yeah.
confirmed.
So, okay, right. So,
But I don't care.
I knew for a fact that I was on a federal police list in Australia in 2010.
Wow.
That is
You've been a very naughty boy.
years ago.
You go back before me.
No, and I knew that because
How does Santa deal with that? Because you're very close to one of the polls.
I was filming for one of my videos. So I do a lot of technical communications. I do really arcane, technical, detailed sort of stuff. And I make it understandable for the common man. That's kind of what I do. That's my shtick. That's my superpower. I take the complicated stuff and I make it simple. That's what I do.
Well, you're sitting down with a bunch of simpletons now, so that makes sense.
You are the most simpleton of simpletons I've ever met.
Most would agree. Most would agree. My wife would definitely.
I don't see any denial.
He's not arguing. He's not arguing. It must be true.
Yeah, that's a great.
Now listen, seriously, are we out? Are we out?
Yeah, mate.
I'm holding my glass with what's left of the liquor diluted by ice.
Sniff it.
I think they're getting worried they're going to start sobering up.
Oh,
Listen, if in a minute I'm going to be sober and then you're in trouble, right? Because then I'm really on top of my game. Like right now, I'm second best. I'm like second rate right now, and you know it.
No. I'm not going to say that there was a staggering incident on a pee break. I'm not going to do that to you.
Listen,
I'd never do that live.
That's why we have cleaners. They clean the floor. Why do you have to say that in public?
We are also going to say that nobody on our team had to get taken to the hospital last night for alcohol either.
Okay.
We're not going to
say
that.
So as he says
that
that there might be someone being dragged away by EMTs, I cannot confirm nor deny.
There were a lot of ambulances.
And we were cussing the ambulance last night, saying, get out of the way so we can go outside and smoke. And it was our buddy getting...
Okay, there's a cigar bar just around the corner. Am I going to see you there after tonight, after like the...
Where?
This is a cigar bar, Shelley's.
Oh.
We're in Washington, D.C.
I've got Cuban cigars.
So listen.
Oh, fuck me, no, sorry. Oh, shit, they're not Cuban. They're not Cuban. Don't arrest me.
Miami is no Cuba, my friend.
No, not Cuban.
None of us would ever break the law. None of us.
Not.
How could you possibly think that we would break the law? So,
guidelines.
I'll see you at Shelley's Cigar Bar later tonight after the gala dinner, yeah?
Fucking here we go.
All right.
This
so
is
we're
how
going
it
to have
starts.
a late night. But listen, okay, so here's what I want to leave with, and it is time to leave because I got to get ready for tonight's gala dinner.
Yeah, I want to talk about the documentary real quick.
Okay, all right, fine.
Please tell us why you did
Cliff
it.
Notes.
All right,
Cliff Notes. I know you're a professional.
All right. So the website you want to go to is battlegroundmelbourne.com. You can watch it for free. It's won 14 awards, and even after those 14 awards, I still don't charge you money. You can watch it for free.
Because you're that special.
Am I slurring my words?
Yes,
absolutely I am.
No, it can be enunciation of the
I've
Australian
had
accent.
Appalachian alcohol. Pretty sure it was moonshine. Not sure. But I'm
now, if it was moonshine, you wouldn't be talking.
Oh, yeah, no, you'd be done.
All right. So go to battlegroundmelbourne.com. You can watch it for free. Now, listen. A lot of people watch this thing and they go, yeah, that happened in Australia, but it can't happen here. Because we're America and we have the First Amendment and we have this. Fuck you.
No, we don't anymore.
Okay.
We don't.
No.
Yeah.
This is absolutely going to happen in your lifetime. And if you're not ready for it, then you will be on the wrong side of history because you will be one of the people that compromises. You'll be one of the people that says, oh, but I can't feed my family. And you compromise and you become one of the people that stood on the guard towers at Auschwitz.
Now,
that's literally what we're talking about here.
Now, one of the interesting things was today, Topher actually had a conversation, was in one of the sessions this morning where he was speaking, and there was 4 other people. What was interesting was I was up the back just watching everything going on, and then when Topher's trailer for the movie got played, without audio, mind you, people started engaging with the entire event that was going on. And then when they saw what was actually happening in Melbourne, all of a sudden the entire audience had just locked on like a laser, and all their eyes were just looking at the projector screen.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that with any other trailer in my life.
You were at the back of the room. You could see the whole room.
I could see the whole room. And not only
out
that,
there in front of you.
Not only that, but
No audio.
No audio. And the thing was, people were walking past the door, and then they would come in. So the room became standing room only.
It was
and this was what a 4-minute trailer.
It was genuinely standing room only.
Standing room
Is that
only.
the one you did with Spike at 10 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We wanted to make that one, but we were still struggling.
So battlegroundmelbourne.com.
Yeah. Battlegroundmelbourne.com. And as I
We're
say,
going to share it.
you know, I've seen parts of it back home, but I've never seen people just switch on the way. And just even if you're going, I don't know if I should watch it or not, just watch the trailer. If that's not enough to convince you to watch it, you probably shouldn't be on this podcast.
And listen.
Exactly. I can't help you.
Yeah.
If you're not prepared to open your fucking mind and listen to the fucking truth, I can't fucking help you.
And the thing is, both of us, you know, are from Melbourne. We both saw all this stuff happen firsthand, whether it was on the news or when we were in the city. As someone who was living in the city, as someone who would actually try and go to work and have police ask me what I was up to. You know, luckily for me, the police were relatively nice, but there's a point where 6 months in...
They weren't for me.
Yeah, not for you. There's a point where 6 months in, you get kind of sick and tired of saying, I'm walking to work or I'm trying to go down to the shops to buy some food. Sure. Yes, I'll be home in 50 minutes' time.
Yeah.
But that was the world that we were in. And the thing is, I hope that one day that ends up in the Australian archive and becomes something that people look at in the future and go, this is what we need to learn from the past in order to help us understand what we don't want to happen in the future.
Look, I'm going to go further, Adrian. I'm going to say I want to be a future Australian of the year. Not for ego, not for like, oh, I'm an Australian of the year. No. So that when people say, fuck you, I took my jab, I protected grandma, I did all the right things, I can say, no, I'm an Australian of the year. And I said no to all of that, and you're going to have to listen to me.
That's right.
You know what? I think that's very powerful.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of folks around this table that did the same thing. Because I went, fuck you too.
Yeah.
Damn right.
Do this to me. You come near me with a jab, I'm going to break your fucking arm.
Yeah.
In several places.
Correct response.
Yep. That's how it rolls.
Well, on that, let's go ahead and get out of here. So I got a dinner to go to. We might show up for the dinner. We might just go upstairs and keep drinking.
Can I just say,
say
can I just say to all the people at Appalachia, all the people with Appalachia.
Yeah, if you say Appalachia,
automatic weapons and 50 cows and like tannerite and all that. I'm so angry that you get to have all the fun.
No, you don't worry. Have the fun.
And I'm going to come.
We can share.
I'm going to have fun myself.
We can share.
There's no doubt. That's what we're good at.
Cool.
Bring a camera too, because there should be a documentary on this asshole right here. just him alone, not to mention
he is a hole of ass. That's not wrong.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. So one more time, where can they find your stuff?
Okay.
Can they find you on
at Topher Field, at the Aussie Wire, at Topher Field? Those are the two addresses you can find us.
Yeah, I gave you a follow on X and Instagram last night. Adrian, redacted. Do you want to tell anybody where they can find you?
No, well, actually, my biggest issue now is trying to get myself off those watch lists.
There you go.
You're on one now.
That's exactly the concern.
Spent way too long at this table.
Although, I'll be honest, the amount of times where I've traveled out of America and I've gone home and at my bag, because normally, you go to CPAC or you go to an event like this, you always take swag home. And there was one time where someone gave me a book, and I know that I put it midway through my bag. I get to Australia, the TSA lock's been activated, and on top is the copy of that book and a copy of the TSA notice. I'm like, wow, I know I'm in trouble. So the book was called I War, but it was actually about promoting how America could win wars in the future, especially against Asian states. I'll be nice about it.
I'm surprised the TSA agent even knew what you.
No,
I'm
but
surprised they can read.
Clearly they took it out. Quickly checked the back of it, put it back in there, and sent me on my way. And said he's obviously good enough that we'll let him come back one day again. But no, look, it's absolutely been fantastic. And even though I'm probably the most sober person here, it's been an absolute riot. Okay. And I think we've both learned that we may one day have to become honorary Appalachians.
I am not the most sober person here, but I will say, Appalachia, as all of America, as
Pure
all
Americana.
America beckons, Appalachia is the place that calls me home.
There you go.
I like that. That's a great spot to wrap it. Fuck, no, we did do that first thing.
Here's the fist bump.
Topher, Adrian, being libertarian, Chip, you are the power of Spike Co. and all the people who've helped us out. Rocky Mountain Burger Company.
Spike's great.
And patreon.com/GetOnTap if you want to be a subscriber for only $10 a month. And of course, you can find us anywhere. All your social medias, the Appalachian Podcast or at Get On Tap on X, which is our most prolific.
There is going to be another
place.
show
And
with
hey, if
these
you're
two
going to be around
hooligans.
tomorrow, come back down here and find us
Hey,
with Spike. You can
hey,
jump
I'll
back
be
on
here
the
tomorrow.
end,
You're
We're
gonna
gonna
have
set
to.
it up.
You're gonna have to run away from me because that was good rum. I'm gonna come to
only
you for a
holds
drink,
good rum.
and you're gonna have to run away from me.
I'll run very slowly.
All right, gentlemen, let's get to dinner. Thank y'all so much. We'll
Bless you,
catch you
mate.
on the next
Enjoyed it. Good night.
Made it to the bottom of the bottle before I put that Willie Nelson record on. And much to my own surprise, I realized I hadn't been this drunk for so long. Spent all my money chasing some good-looking honey down in a honky-tonk. Thought she was a queen of hearts, but she turned into a joker that didn't hang around too long. So, oh Lord, if you're up there smiling down on me, I don't ask for much, I only take just what I need. So give me weed, give me whiskey, and play a Hank Jr. song. Give me weed, give me whiskey, and play a Hank Jr. song. Now I learned at an early age the man up above won't try to steer you wrong. So sure that he'd understand if tonight I decided that I need to get stoned. They taught me that's a good book, it holds all the answers in life that I'd ever need to know. Whiskey been and hellbound, this show hit me right. It rocks me right down to my soul. So give me weed, give me whiskey, and play a Hank Jr. song. Give me weed, give me whiskey, and play a Hank Jr. song. Yeah, all night long, it rolls strong. So, oh Lord, if you're up there smiling down on me, I don't ask for much, I only take just what I need.